Chapter 2959. Before he could finish speaking, Muyaja glared at him as if he was about to kill him. Jiang Shen shut up at the right time. Lu Jinyu laughed out loud. Ah Shen, don't tease boss. Don't you know? Boss is famous for being a blockhead and a slave to his wife. Look at how boss signed those billion-dollar contracts without batting an eyelid. But if sister-in-law's face gets sullen, boss will definitely be in a hurry to coax her. It's said that many men are very tormented when their wives are pregnant. Those who can bear it will ask their wives to use other methods to resolve it. Those who can't bear it will cheat and have affairs at this time. However, boss is a slave to his wife of the new era. It's only 10 months. Just grit your teeth and it'll pass just like that. As Lu Jinyu spoke, he said vividly in front of Muyaja, Ah Shan, why don't we bring boss out to have some fun tonight? I know a place where the girls are not bad. Be careful, sister-in-law will come after you. Jiang Shan smiled evilly and said, Boss, you have to hold on. You have to hold on until the last moment. You have to protect your integrity for sister-in-law. Humph. Muyaja pretended to be calm as he flipped open the financial report and said with a calm expression, It's only 10 months. Although he said it casually, when this person lay beside him at night, a certain man suddenly realized how long 10 months was. It was practically light years. What was the feeling of despair? That was when he thought about how he still had to endure for 6 months before he could unload the goods. Sometimes when he had a reaction, even a cold shower could only temporarily soothe it. When he lay down on the bed and held her in his arms, he felt that indescribable feeling again. Where did he get so much energy from? It seemed that he had to think of a way to exhaust this excess energy. Hence Muyaja decided to set up a gym at home. Every day, he would run for an hour before going to bed and then do a set of barbells. With this thought in mind, he quickly put it into action. The next day, Yun Shirsher heard the sounds of walls being cut, smashed and electric drills coming from the basement. A few days later, Muyaja directed the construction team to transport the panels for the renovation. A week later, the various fitness equipment he had ordered arrived. Yun Shirsher was dumbfounded. Therefore, when it was time to sleep every day, Muyaja would always set aside 2 hours to go to the gym in advance. First, he would run on the treadmill for 50 minutes. Then, he would do 2 sets of dumbbells, 2 sets of dumbbells. After that, she took a shower and went to bed at 10 o'clock. She was exhausted. This method was somewhat useful. Because working out consumed a lot of excess energy, once the pillow touched, naturally there would be no more thoughts about sleeping, and there would be no energy to think about other things. After a month, his figure had been trained to the point where it could be called a work of the gods. Once, Yu caught a glimpse of Muyaja changing his clothes. The moment Muyaja took off his clothes, Yu was shocked by his toned muscles and perfect 8-pack abs. When did Daddy's figure become so good? Yu found it extremely strange. Chapter 2960. When Shaoqian heard this, he ran over to take a peek. In the end, he ran back with a nosebleed. He's so handsome. His eyes were sparkling. Luckily, Mommy can't see. Otherwise, Mommy would be smitten. Are you exaggerating? You don't understand. Shaoqian looked at him with disdain. Girls can't resist a man with a good figure. Yu was speechless. Was that so? Hence, Shaoqian and Yu would appear punctually at the gym on the basement floor at 8 o'clock in the evening. This time, it was Muyaja's turn to be dumbfounded. What are you doing here? Working out. Yu said in all seriousness. I want to work out too. Muyaja muttered gloomily. You're only 7 years old. Why do you need to work out? Yu asked in return. Then why did Daddy set up such a gym for no reason and work out so hard every day? Muyaja looked embarrassed for a moment. He cleared his throat awkwardly but didn't answer their question directly. Yu found it even stranger. Shaoqian also found it strange. Daddy, you're very suspicious. Mommy can't see such a good figure even though you're working out. Then why are you working so hard to keep fit? Muyaja said in all seriousness. I can't sleep at night, so exercise helps me sleep. Insomnia? Yu looked at him strangely and rubbed his chin. Why would you have insomnia for no reason? That's strange. Muyaja's face darkened. When have I ever seen you so concerned about me? You're the one who's strange. Yu also looked embarrassed. He definitely wouldn't tell the truth. It was just that when he saw Muyaja's lean figure, he felt envious and yearned for it. He also wanted to work out and train his body. On top of that, Xiaoqian had been preaching that working out could make one's body healthier and have a stronger immune system. Furthermore, the metabolism during exercise would promote physical development. This caused him to waver. Because, I feel that Daddy has been very suspicious recently. Daddy never used to work out. Muyaja looked at Yu Yu and saw a burning desire in his eyes. This guy. Yu Yu felt a little guilty under his stare. At the side, Xiaoqian immediately explained, Daddy's figure has become great after working out. So, Yu Yu and I are very envious and want to work out with Daddy. Go and run on the treadmill for 40 minutes. Muyaja instructed as he pointed at the treadmill. 40 minutes? Yu Yu wanted to back out. I'll die in 40 minutes. How do you know you can't do it if you haven't tried? The first 30 minutes of running will deplete carbohydrates. 40 minutes will deplete excess fat. After pausing for a while, Muyaja continued, running is good for improving your physical strength. Start with running. Yu Yu and Xiaoqian glanced at each other, and then reluctantly got on the treadmill and started running. After half a month, the results were obvious. Huajin realized that the father-son trio would disappear at 8 o'clock sharp. Later on, he squatted down and discovered the father-son trio's shocking secret. These three guys were actually here. Fitness. Fitness. Chapter 2961. Huajin was really jealous. He also wanted to work out. He also wanted to be nice. Buddy. Hence, Huajin also joined the army of fitness. At 8 o'clock in the evening, they all went to the gym together and worked out. Fitness was the ultimate motivator. Muyaja's fitness was not purely about consuming energy. After all, it was also a good way to improve one's figure. His perseverance was definitely not a slacker either. Once he decided to work out, he would definitely persevere until the end. Because of the fitness, his figure had undoubtedly become better. Sometimes at night when they were lying in bed, Yun Shirshir would hug him and feel his strong abdominal muscles. She could not help but feel a little surprised. Your abdominal muscles didn't seem so obvious in the past, right? Yun Shirshir was a little puzzled. It's a little strange. You've been so mysterious recently, and your figure has become so good? Could it be that you're working out? You guessed it right. Yun Shirshir asked half jokingly and half seriously. Don't tell me you decided to work out to vent your excess energy. Muyaja's face was serious. Isn't it good to work out? Your figure can be very good. Your figure is so good, but I can't see it either. Yun Shirshir was a little disappointed. You will. Muyaja hugged her tightly and smiled. When Yueyao is born and recuperates, we'll immediately arrange for the cornea transplant surgery. But the surgery is not something that can be done just because you want to. Yun Shirshir felt a little wronged. After all, cornea donors can only be found by chance. I don't know when the next opportunity will come. You don't have to worry about these things. I'll worry about these things. You just need to take care of yourself and recuperate well. Don't worry about other things. Okay. Yun Shirshir nodded. I'll listen to you. The weather was getting hotter. Unknowingly, it was already June. But the weather was already starting to get hot. Every afternoon, it was especially hot and unbearable. Every time Huajin came home, he would bring ice cream for the little ones. Yu Yu and Xiaoqian each held a Haagen-Dazs and ate with relish. Haagen-Dazs. Yun Shirshir was drooling. She used to love Haagen-Dazs when she was still an office worker. This is the Hermes of the ice cream industry. Although Yun Shirshir couldn't see, her ears weren't deaf. She heard the two little guys eating ice cream, and her saliva secreted even more. Huajin, why didn't you bring me? Yun Shirshir asked angrily. Huajin said innocently, brother-in-law said that you can't eat cold food. Why? Yun Shirshir asked gloomily. Why can't I eat ice cream? That's not fair. Yu Yu licked his lips, still yearning for more. When he heard his mother grumbling at the side, he explained. Daddy read in a book that pregnant women should avoid contact with ice as much as possible. I don't remember the exact reason, but in any case, Daddy's words are clear and logical. Mommy, just bear with it for a while. For the sake of sister's health, don't touch ice cream. Muyaja had read the Encyclopedia of Pregnancy before. It said that pregnant women shouldn't eat cold food, or even touch it. Research showed that when a pregnant woman's hand touched ice, the blood vessels in the uterus would contract, which would affect the blood circulation of the fetus and affect its growth. Therefore, he repeatedly ordered her not to touch anything cold. Chapter 2962. It was fine when the weather was cool, but in the middle of summer, the air conditioner alone was not enough to relieve the heat. Everything she drank was warm. Yun Shirshir was about to complain. Why are you guys not moving? How does it feel to drink warm water on such a hot day? I feel like there's a ball of fire in my body. I'm about to burn. I'm burning. Hua Jin and Yu looked at each other and gave Yun Shirshir a sympathetic look. Xiao Chen, who was beside them, felt his heart ache even more. Yun Shirshir sat at the table and held the teacup in her hand with an aggrieved expression. The teacup was filled with hot water that had just been boiled. As it had not cooled down yet, she was so thirsty that her throat was about to smoke. She could not drink any water. It was too hot. These days are simply too torturous. She wept and wailed, her hopes dashed. It was easy to be anxious during pregnancy. Moreover, it was summer. More importantly, her situation was very different from when she first got pregnant. When she was first pregnant, Wuxia had sent a top-notch nursing team to take good care of her food, clothing, and daily necessities. At that time, she was 18 years old and pregnant for the first time. The pregnancy symptoms were not serious. At first, she had some morning sickness and did not have a good appetite. Hence, the nurse in charge of taking care of her put in a lot of effort to adjust her appetite. Fruit yogurt, potato salad, watermelon juice, orange juice. Due to the need to nourish the fetus, she was arranged to live in a villa near the sea. Although she did not leave the house, the villa had a large courtyard, rockery, and flowing water. When she was free, she would take a walk in the courtyard. When she took a walk, a large group of people followed closely behind her. After all, the child in her stomach was precious. Wuxia repeatedly emphasized that if anything happened to the child, they would be held accountable. They could not bear the responsibility. Hence, they took good care of her 24 hours a day. For the first 6 months of her pregnancy, she would take a half-hour walk every day. It was because she heard that if she exercised more during pregnancy, the delivery would be much smoother. Sometimes when the weather was good, she would go to the beach, step on the tide, walk barefoot on the beach and pick up seashells. When she returned home, she settled down and made a wind chime with the seashells and hung it on the window. Her craftsmanship was especially good, and the wind chimes she made were beautiful and unique. When the sea breeze blew, the shells gently swayed, making a crisp and pleasant sound. At that time, although the days were leisurely, she was never idle. She would read books, do her homework, watch TV when she was free, sit on the swing in the courtyard and bask in the sun. Every day, she would arrange herself to the fullest. However, things were different now. She couldn't see, so it was inconvenient for her to do anything. When it came to pregnancy, it was extremely boring. There was a little one in her stomach. She had to carefully protect her, but she also had to worry about this and that. Reading books, watching TV, surfing the internet on his phone, doing handicrafts, drawing. It was basically impossible for her to complete it on her own. Most of the time, she could only sit on the recliner and listen to music. Wuxia especially bought a lot of albums for her, saying that he wanted to give the baby prenatal education and cultivate his temperament. Temperament? All right. What Mozart? What Chopin? What Richard Bradman? Oh my God. Let her go. Chapter 2963. But other than listening to music, she seemed to have nothing else to do. Even though she was craving for some snacks on a whim, just as she opened a packet of potato chips, Yu appeared out of nowhere and snatched the packet away from her. He said righteously, "You can't secretly eat potato chips. There's selenum in potato chips. If it's eaten in large quantities, it might cause fetal abnormalities. Although the potato chips have been processed at high temperatures, they still contain high levels of oil and salt, which can cause pregnancy hypertension." "I ate potato chips when I was pregnant with you too," Yun Shirshir said, feeling wronged. "Weren't you fine?" "That's because I was strong enough." Yu clenched her fists. "But it's better to be safe than sorry. What if? Am I right? Mommy, when little sister is born, you'll be free. Hold on a little longer." She couldn't eat spicy food. She couldn't eat ice. She couldn't eat too much meat either. She couldn't eat too much sugar either. More importantly, ever since she got pregnant, she really had nothing to do besides listening to music and taking a stroll after meals. More importantly, Muyaja's nursing skills were indeed passable. After all, he was born into a rich family and had never served anyone before. This was his first time serving someone, and it was her. Although his attitude was good, but in the middle of the night, she was suddenly awakened by hunger. Her stomach was growling. She turned her head and saw that Muyaja was sleeping soundly. Hence, she snapped her fingers lightly and the voice-activated wall lights lit up. Ever since her eyesight had deteriorated, Muyaja had changed all the lights in the house to motion sensor lights. Although her eyesight wasn't good, especially at night, it didn't mean that she couldn't see anything. If the wall lights were on, she could still make out the faint light. Hence, he changed them to motion sensor lights. As long as there was even the slightest sound, the lights would light up. Wherever she went, the lights would illuminate the place. At least, she could use the light to determine her direction. Where there were lights, he had removed all the furnishings and there were no obstructions. Even Yu did not expect such thoughtfulness, but Muyaja was the first to take it into consideration. Yun Shirshir was amazed by such a high-tech light control system. However, it was much more convenient after changing the light control system. She followed the light and groped her way to the shelf. She took a packet of biscuits and tore off the packaging. Muyaja was awakened by the sound of cracking. His first reaction when he woke up was, there was a rat. Then he heard the crunching sound of a mouse eating a biscuit. When he turned around, he realized that Yun Shirshir was no longer there. Only then did he guess that the sound must have come from a hungry kitten in the middle of the night. Following the sound, he walked into the living room and saw someone sitting on the sofa, happily munching on a biscuit. He didn't go forward to disturb her. He quietly crossed his arms and leaned against the wall, watching her eat. Yun Shirshir was so hungry that she couldn't care less about her image. She stuffed the biscuits into her mouth carelessly. She held a bottle of mineral water in her right hand and gulped it down from time to time. She seemed to be eating too quickly and choked. Muyaja walked over nervously and sat down beside her. He gently patted her back. Eat slowly. No one's fighting with you. Yun Shirshir heard his voice and was stunned. She looked up. You're awake? Chapter 2964. Yeah. I was woken up by the sound of you eating. He stroked her back gently as he said. Those who didn't know better would have thought that there was a rat in the house. You said that I sounded like a rat when I ate the biscuits. She questioned, feeling hurt. What? She felt aggrieved and unhappy. However, he was amused. Aren't rats cute? Speaking of which, you seem to be eating in such a hurry. Are you that hungry? Yeah. I don't know why, but I was woken up by hunger. I remember that I ate quite a lot last night. Why am I so hungry? It's probably because the baby is hungry. Really? Yun Shirshir smiled. All right. I feel that it's especially difficult when I'm pregnant with this guy. After a pause, she held his arm and said coquettishly, Hubby, I want to eat ice cream. No. Muyaja immediately put on a straight face. You're not allowed to eat it. She begged again. Boo-hoo. Just one bite. Just one bite. Okay? Can't you bear with it? I don't know why, but I've been craving ice cream lately. It would have been better if he hadn't mentioned ice cream. The moment he mentioned ice cream, her saliva secreted even more. She swallowed a mouthful pitifully and said, One bite will do. Can you satisfy my craving? No. His stance was firm, and he didn't waver because of her grievances. If you can't eat it, you can't eat it. How can you be so heartless? Yun Shirshir said angrily. Can't you be more open-minded? Madam, I'm already very open-minded. I'm doing this for your own good. If it's for my own good, shouldn't you be looking for ice cream on the streets for me? She was being unreasonable. However, he was still very patient. He patted her head gently and coaxed. Be good. Go to sleep after eating. Don't think about it and you won't be hungry anymore. But I just can't stop thinking about it. Be good. Muyaja leaned close to her ear and said meaningfully, I can resist not touching you for 10 months. Can't you resist not touching ice for 10 months? Oh, Yoon Shirshir's face flushed red in an instant. She clutched the corner of her pajamas tightly and said awkwardly, I heard that, even when you're pregnant, as long as you're careful in the first 3 months, it won't affect you in bed. No. Muyaja, on the other hand, was a conservative. He said stubbornly, as long as there's even the slightest risk, I won't allow it. You're being too cautious. What if? He suddenly held her shoulders and stared at her. It's because I care too much that I'm careful in everything. Even if there's a little risk, I won't do it. There's no what if. And I won't allow any what if. It was precisely because he cared too much that he was so careful about everything, no matter how big or small. He was afraid that if he was not careful, something would happen to her and the child in her stomach. Perhaps ordinary people would find it difficult to understand his feelings. He didn't want the child in his belly to be hurt at all, and he didn't want her to suffer at all. He knew in his heart that the days of pregnancy were indeed torturous. Moreover, she couldn't see or do anything. Even reading books was the most extravagant thought. That was why he had spared no effort to spare more time to accompany him. Chapter 2965. It was a good thing that he had 2 capable assistants. However, Lu Jinyu and Jiang Shan could not voice their grievances. Those who didn't know better would think that boss was pregnant for 10 months. Yoon Shirshir could only give up. She reluctantly let him hold her hand and returned to the bedroom. Muyaja carried her to the bed and covered her with the blanket. After he got on the bed, Yoon Shirshir suddenly turned around and hugged him. Thank you. Huh? He raised his eyebrows in surprise. However, she heard her say, have I been making trouble for no reason recently? Before he could speak, she continued in frustration. I don't know why, but recently my temper has been getting harder and harder to control. If I don't get satisfied with the small things, I feel especially anxious and want to flare up. Have I always made you angry? No. Muyaja smiled and said, Madam, this is a special period now. I'll give in to you more. In other words, even if I'm unreasonable, you won't stoop to my level? Yoon Shirshir teased him deliberately. When Muyaja heard this, how could he not know that she was deliberately digging a hole for him to jump into? However, he was a smart person. He knew that if he said yes directly, she might be unhappy. Therefore, he asked seriously, how is this being unreasonable? Madam is righteous, gentle, and virtuous. I can't wait to dote on you. Although Yoon Shirshir knew that he was deliberately coaxing her, her heart was still as sweet as honey. All right, stop fooling around. Muyaja pulled her into his arms and reminded her, sleep early. Lying in his arms, she suddenly felt a little uneasy. Is this the happiest moment of my life? Why do I feel a little uneasy? Muyaja raised his eyebrows, not understanding what she meant. I'm so happy now. I don't know what the future will be like, but this should be the happiest moment of my life. I'm so happy that I feel like it's almost unreal. No. Muyaja gently stroked her hair. I will make you happier. I want to give you the most beautiful things in the world. Yoon Shirshir pursed her lips and fell asleep peacefully on his chest. Not long after, he began to snore softly. Sleeping so soon? He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He rubbed her face. Pig. Thus, with her in his arms, he fell asleep contentedly. However, not long after, Yoon Shirshir's resentment towards the ice cream came again. The weather was getting hotter. Hua Jin seemed to be deliberately provoking hatred. He wholesale a large batch of ice cream, Häagen-Dazs, Baxi, Cornetto, and all kinds of other ice creams. Yu returned home and opened the fridge. When she saw the fridge full of ice cream, she broke out in a cold sweat. She couldn't help but wonder if this Hua Jin did it on purpose. Did he deliberately use ice cream to attract hatred? Didn't he know that Mommy had been complaining for a long time because she couldn't eat ice cream? What a huge grudge. Life is hard, so don't expose it, okay? Mommy is already having a hard time. However, Hua Jin said that the weather was getting hotter. If they went out to buy ice cream every day, they would be melted by the sun just by walking. It was better to do it all at once. Yu felt that it made sense. Every afternoon, Hua Jin and the 2 little munchkins would sit at the entrance of the back garden, eating ice cream and chatting. Yoon Shirshir sat at the side hugging Liang Bai Kai, her face full of resentment. Chapter 2966. Mommy, just be good. Yu muttered. Bear with it for a while and you'll have a bright future. Can't I just have one bite? Not even one bite. Daddy will beat me up. Yu snorted. Xiaoqian covered his mouth as he snickered. He might even punish you with the crime of murdering the little princess. Yu nodded in agreement. Yun Shirshir stood up angrily and walked slowly in their direction. When Hua Jin saw this, he immediately reached out to help her up. Sister, be careful. Yun Shirshir flung his hand away angrily and said speechlessly, Don't touch me. I'm not your sister. Hua Jin, who was innocently implicated, cried helplessly. Why am I implicated as well? You didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she said. How is this being implicated? You're the real source of all evil. What do you mean by that? Hua Jin pointed at himself, wanting to cry but having no tears. How am I the source of all evil? Yu said. If you hadn't seduced Mommy on purpose, Mommy wouldn't have been so greedy. A pot floated down from the sky. It hit Hua Jin hard on the head. Hua Jin hugged the pot and said pitifully, All right, my pot. It's just pregnancy. It's not my first time. When I was pregnant with you guys, I wasn't so careful. I couldn't touch this or that. Weren't you guys healthy? When Yu heard this, she immediately cleared her throat and pouted. That's not fair. Xiaoqian's body is so strong. But Mommy, have you forgotten that I spent most of my time in the hospital before I was 4 years old? So it turns out that you didn't take good care of the fetus during your pregnancy. Perhaps my poor physical fitness is related to this. It would have been better if she had not explained it this way. Once she did, Yu felt that Muyaja was right. She was even more convinced of the importance of taking care of the fetus. Another pot was thrown from the sky, and this time it was directly smashed on Yun Shirshir's head. She was completely confused as she silently cursed in her heart. Your physical fitness isn't good. It's not because you're in the nurturing period. Yun Shirshir explained innocently. You and Xiaoqian are twins. The doctor said that when you were in my stomach, you were competing for nutrients. You couldn't compete with Xiaoqian. Also, you were born prematurely 8 months ago. Because you were born prematurely, you were weak. Why is it premature? Yu asked curiously, blinking. The doctor said that it's because of the anxiety during the pregnancy plus. At that time when she was more than 7 months pregnant, Yun Shirshir asked for permission to meet Yun Yeqing. That period of time was when the Yun family was at its most difficult. However, even though they had been meeting, Yun Yeqing was very extreme about her surrogacy. He was once so proud. How could he watch his beloved daughter use her body as the price to repay the Yun family's debt? This debt to the loan sharks might be cleared in an instant. However, the guilt he felt toward her was something that he would never be able to repay in this lifetime. Therefore, every time they met, the father and daughter would sit opposite each other. He would always think of all sorts of ways to persuade her to abort the child. Yun Yeqing's thinking was very simple, but he did not know that if she were to abort the child, it would be even more harmful to her body. Chapter 2967. Hence, during that period of time, the pressure and burden on her heart were too heavy. Her first child was twins. Furthermore, she was only 18 years old when she got pregnant. Compared to other pregnant women of her age, the preterm delivery rate was 11 times higher. Furthermore, her emotions fluctuated greatly. One morning when she woke up, she had just gotten out of bed and walked a few steps when she felt something strange in her body. On the way back to school in the car, she suddenly felt a warm liquid sliding down her thighs. It turned out that her amniotic fluid had broken. As there was still a long way to go before the due date, no one had expected the sudden premature birth. She was then rushed to the hospital. Fortunately, her life was saved. Hua Jin suddenly mumbled, If it's just a little bit, it shouldn't be a problem, right? No way. Yu insisted. If anything happens to Mommy, Daddy will tear you to pieces. Hua Jin swallowed his saliva in horror. So brutal. Of course. His sister is his life. With her around, we'll lose our status. As he spoke, Yu and Xiaoqian hugged each other and cried. Xiaoqian, I suddenly feel so sad. Yun Shirshir was speechless. When did these two little guys become so dramatic? Yun Shirshir argued with the three of them for a long time, but it was all in vain. However, this stubbornness didn't diminish at all. Especially at night, when she was forced to lie in bed and cover herself with a thin blanket. Because a certain man solemnly said that pregnant women shouldn't be exposed to too much air conditioning, and that it wasn't the dog days of summer yet, Wuxia only turned the air conditioner fan on. She begged him to turn it on and he finally turned it to 29 degrees. 29 degrees. Wasn't that the same as not turning it on? Because of the stuffy heat in the house, she missed the sweet and frosty taste of ice cream. Hence, for some reason, she got out of bed and tiptoed to the man's room. Pushing open the door, she made her way to his bed. Pa! A hand covered Hua Jin's face. Hua Jin was sleeping soundly. In his dream, a terrifying hand suddenly reached out towards him and touched his face. He was startled awake from his dream and saw Yun Shishir sitting by his bedside, softly calling out to him. Hua Jin, wake up. What's wrong? Hua Jin immediately sat up nervously and looked at her worriedly. Are you not feeling well? I really want to eat ice cream. Hua Jin, can you take me to eat ice cream? Hua Jin. He looked at her with a puzzled expression. He really didn't know what kind of obsession made her come all the way to his room in the middle of the night to beg him to take her to eat ice cream. His room was quite a distance away from hers, and there was even a staircase. It must have taken her a lot of effort to find her way here. Is it necessary? Hua Jin was about to cry from laughing. Do you really want to eat ice cream that much? Yes, yes. Whenever I hear about ice cream, I salivate. Chapter 2968. Hua Jin, if you can't even fulfill such a small request, I'm going to be depressed. Hua Jin looked at her with heartache. Perhaps, in the eyes of others, such a request was too pretentious. But to him, he could understand it very well. When other people were pregnant, at least their eyes were useful. Even if they had a strong desire for something, they could still do other things to distract themselves. But she couldn't. She couldn't do anything. She couldn't do anything. She could draw, embroider, read, watch television, surf the internet, play games. She even needed someone to support her when she took a walk. It was extremely boring. Probably not many people could tolerate it. Or perhaps if it were someone else, they would probably be diagnosed with depression. Hua Jin hesitated for a moment. Suddenly, he reached for his cell phone and said, Wait a minute. Huh? What are you doing? She asked curiously. Hua Jin didn't answer immediately. She could only hear the sound of web pages being switched on his cell phone. A few minutes later, Hua Jin put down his cell phone and said to her, I did some research just now. It said that if it's just a little, it's okay to eat something cold once in a while. Moreover, the weather is hot now, so it's not a big taboo. Hua Jin snapped his fingers and said, Just the right amount. Yes, just the right amount. Right? I was right, wasn't I? Yun Shishir said agitatedly. They said that pregnant women shouldn't be in front of the computer for too long because there will be radiation. But in reality, when I used to work, many of my colleagues were pregnant, but I didn't see any of them quit their jobs. She only went back on maternity leave to prepare for labor when she was about to give birth. The little ones that she gave birth to are all healthy. But there's no more ice cream at home. Hua Jin looked at her expression and said carefully, You and Xiaoichen have eaten it all. Why are these two little guys eating so fiercely? She muttered. Hua Jin looked at her and laughed. Okay, stop muttering. I'll take you to find ice cream now, okay? Okay. Then change your clothes. All right. Hua Jin held her hand and led her to the cloakroom. He took all the clothes for her, closed the door, and let her change. He was wearing home clothes, so it didn't matter if he didn't change. After Yun Shishir changed her clothes, Hua Jin secretly stole a key and led her to the garage. He helped her into the front passenger seat, then sat in the car and started the car. It's already 12 o'clock. I'm afraid there aren't any ice cream shops open. It doesn't matter if it's not Häagen-Dazs. Hua Jin held the steering wheel and thought for a while. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. I know a place. Where? The biggest night market in Jing'an district. There are also many midnight snacks there. Now that the weather is so hot, every shop will start to sell Baxi ice cream boxes. 8. Yun Shishir's mouth watered even more. Baxi is delicious too. All right. Greedy little cat. I'll take you there. Hua Jin stepped on the accelerator and the car slowly drove out of the garage. He was so focused on talking to Yun Shirshir that he forgot to look in the rearview mirror. After he drove out of the garage, a luxury car parked at the entrance slowly followed behind. Chapter 2969. Hence, the two of them started to chat leisurely. Yun Shirshir asked, "Have you been busy with work recently?" Hua Jin replied, "I'm not busy. I've taken on a lot of commercials recently. It might have something to do with Lethal Beauty's high viewership ratings." Yun Shirshir was surprised. "Lethal Beauty has been very popular recently?" Hua Jin nodded. "Yeah, after your character died, the viewership ratings shot up." Yun Shirshir was speechless. Hua Jin said, "After all, the villain is dead, and the audience's passion for watching shows has been revived. Because of Lethal Beauty's good viewership ratings, I've taken on a lot of commercials. One of the biggest sources of income for a celebrity was advertisements. It was the most important component. Usually, a celebrity's income came from filming movies and TV dramas. With Hua Jin's status, he would get 1 million for filming an episode. After the company's share, he would get 600,000 after tax. In other words, there were 60 episodes of Lethal Beauty, and Hua Jin had a net profit of 36 million. That was a very eye-catching figure. In the entertainment industry, this income was something that many people could only look up to. But this was only a part of the income. Usually, other than acting, each person could film an average of 2 TV dramas and 1 movie in a year. In addition to various variety shows and stage performances, the remuneration from filming commercials still accounted for the majority of the income. The filming period for commercials was usually a few days, and in these few days they could earn a few million. Could be said that it was easy and simple. Hua Jin had more than 10 endorsements, big and small, from high-end cosmetics to luxury brands, to mobile phones, home appliances, snacks, drinks, shampoo. The advertising economy depended on whether the fans' purchasing power was strong. Hua Jin's fans were especially crazy. Basically, if they got him to endorse, they would definitely make a profit. Hence, it was no wonder that he was feeling so refreshed recently. How could he not be happy about taking on so many commercials? Your popularity has been soaring recently. After all, the male lead role played by Hua Jin was really too likable. Introverted, steady, and expressive from the beginning to the end. With the popularity of the TV series, his popularity would definitely rise. My net worth has also increased by many times. Qin Zhou said that it's rising faster than the stock market. Ha ha ha. The car drove to the night market. After parking the car, Hua Jin held Yun Shirshir's hand and searched along the way. Finally, they found a barbecue restaurant that sold baxi. "Shirshir, you sit here for a while, I'll buy you baxi." Yun Shirshir sat down obediently, looking forward to Hua Jin buying her beloved baxi. 3 minutes later, Hua Jin bought 2 servings of baxi, one with strawberry flavor and the other with chocolate flavor. He walked over with a smile on his face, handed her the box of strawberry flavor ice cream, and opened it for her. "Here. Spoon." He handed over a spoon, but just as he sat down, he suddenly sensed a cold aura beside him. He couldn't help but shiver. He raised his head and his gaze fell on the man standing behind Yun Shirshir. He immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. His eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. Yun Shirshir heard him suck in a breath of cold air and was also shocked. Her hand that was holding the spoon suddenly froze. She asked nervously, "Hua Jin, what's the matter?" Sister. He stammered for a while, incoherent. He was obviously scared out of his wits. This made her nervous too. "I'm here. Why are you calling me?" Chapter 2970. Brother-in-law. Yun Shirshir was stunned when she heard the word brother-in-law. Brother-in-law? For a moment her mind was racing. Hua Jin's brother-in-law, isn't he? Yun Shirshir froze and turned her head mechanically. Even though she couldn't see clearly, she could see a tall figure in her hazy vision. He was tall and seemed to be dressed in black casual clothes. She couldn't see his face clearly, but his imposing aura and Muyaja's unique aura made her realize she had been caught red-handed. Why did he follow them here? Yun Shirshir's face was especially stiff. Hua Jin, on the other hand, gulped nervously and laughed. "Brother-in-law, why are you here?" He smiled ingratiatingly while cursing silently. How did he find his way here? Could it be that they had a GPS tracker on them? When Hua Jin was making up a story, Muyaja smirked. You don't have a GPS tracker on you. Then did you send a private investigator to follow us? Hua Jin blurted out. However, he covered his mouth the next second and looked at him awkwardly. He actually blurted it out. Wait a minute. How did he know what he was making up in his mind? Could it be? His brother-in-law had a superpower like mind reading. Hua Jin's imagination was running wild. Muyaja continued. I don't have mind reading abilities either. Hua Jin felt even more awkward. He fidgeted and asked. Then how do you know what I'm thinking? What you're thinking is written all over your face. Muyaja paused for a moment. His gaze fell on the ice cream in his and Yun Shishir's hands, and his gaze became even colder. Eating ice cream in the middle of the night? Muyaja's gaze revealed a hint of danger. He scrutinized him again. His cold and unpredictable gaze was really chilling. Hua Jin felt his hair stand on end under his stare. Just as he was about to explain himself, Yun Shishir sat up properly and said with a smile. Hua Jin said that he suddenly wanted to eat ice cream, so I accompanied him here. She smashed the big wok on Hua Jin's head. Hua Jin. What? He was betrayed just like that. Hua Jin was trembling in fear. Hearing this, Muyaja's meaningful gaze landed on him. Startled, he was about to clear his name from the suspicion, when Muyaja interrupted him. But unexpectedly, Yun Shishir seemed to know what he was going to explain. She reached her hand under the table and pinched Hua Jin's thigh. Hua Jin shuddered as his eyes turned red from the pain. He subconsciously blurted out, Yes, sister is right. Only then did Yun Shishir let go. She looked uneasy. Hua Jin was in so much pain that he was about to cry. He immediately used his palm to caress the area where she had pinched him just now. Tears were streaming down his face. He felt bitter inside, but he didn't say it out loud. Muyaja obviously saw Yun Shishir's little action, but he deliberately didn't expose her. His gaze was unfathomable as he smiled slightly. Oh, Hua Jin smiled. I don't know why, but when I woke up in the middle of the night, I really wanted to eat ice cream. But it was too boring to eat it alone, so I dragged her along to accompany me. So, Muyaja glanced at him coldly. You're pregnant too? The atmosphere was awkward. What was he most afraid of? He was most afraid of the sudden silence in the air. Hua Jin sat up uneasily. He touched his belly and laughed dryly. Maybe? Ha ha ha. Brother-in-law, your cold joke is so cold. Chapter 2971. Don't stare at me like that anymore, okay? Please, please. I'm also very innocent. Hua Jin chanted the great compassion mantra in his heart as he stood in the middle of Muyaja's freezing ray. Yun Shishir teased. I don't know why, but Hua Jin suddenly had a craving and wanted to eat baxi. I thought that since I couldn't sleep, I would accompany him to look for food. Ha ha. Muyaja also sneered. Ha ha. Yun Shishir was speechless. Hua Jin was speechless. The two of them were silently pleading in their hearts. You'd better not laugh. Crying is better than laughing. Yun Shishir felt extremely guilty. However, she heard Muyaja actually sit down beside her and turned to look at Hua Jin. He propped his chin up lazily and looked at him like a loving elder looking at a junior. Hua Jin became even more uneasy. Brother-in-law, what's the matter? He looked at him and his tone became strangely gentle. Do you like ice cream that much? Even though it was such a gentle tone, it was extremely cold when it fell on his ears. He felt that there was a hidden meaning in his gaze and words. Hua Jin couldn't help but shudder. He braced himself and nodded. Yes. All right then. Muyaja suddenly stood up and left his seat. Hua Jin didn't care where he was going or what he was going to do. He nervously grabbed Yun Shishir's sleeve and asked with a sad face. Sister, I don't want to be the scapegoat. Brother-in-law is so cruel. Who knows how he'll teach me a lesson? He won't go to get a whip to whip me, right? That can't be. He won't do anything to you in public. Yun Shishir was also very nervous. She paused and quickly comforted him, saying, Don't worry, your brother-in-law is very gentle. He won't scold you or hit you. If he dares to hit you, I'll definitely stand in front of you. Really? Hua Jin was skeptical when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around doubtfully and saw Muyaja holding 2 large buckets of baxi in his hands. He walked to his side and placed them in front of him. I'll treat you. Huajin froze. These 2 large boxes of 8 happiness contain 5 small boxes of 8 happiness. As Huajin stared blankly, Muyaja sat across from him and looked at him calmly. Let's eat. We'll buy more if it's not enough. It's my treat. Huajin showed a reluctant expression. That's not good, is it? Yun Shirshir couldn't see, but she could hear Huajin's voice. It sounded like he was about to cry. Didn't you say you wanted to eat? Muyaja smiled deeply. If you don't eat. Huajin looked at him eagerly. Muyaja's voice turned cold. If you don't eat, don't blame me for being rude. Yun Shirshir just sat by the side in a dignified manner. But what she didn't see was that Muyaja was sitting opposite Huajin, holding a bucket of baxi in one hand and a spoon in the other. He was tirelessly feeding large chunks of ice cream to Huajin. Huajin didn't dare to resist. Thinking of his threat, he felt that he should eat up baxi. Hence, he braced himself and took mouthful after mouthful of ice cream. Even though the weather was hot, his teeth were still chattering from the cold after one bucket. Muyaja opened another bucket casually and sent a mouthful of ice cream to his mouth. He ordered calmly, "Eat. Woo." The corners of Huajin's eyes were twitching. After taking a mouthful, he felt unwell. Chapter 2972. Come, open your mouth. Muyaja raised the spoon. Brother-in-law, can I take it away if I can't finish it? He glanced at the ice cream in his hand and burped. His smile was uglier than his crying face. I'm almost full. Muyaja replied nonchalantly. If you can't finish it, then you'll have to bear the consequences. Huajin frowned. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Bear the consequences? What kind of bear the consequences? Muyaja replied proudly. Humph, what do you think? "'Kay, I'll eat it." Huajin looked like he was ready to die. How did it feel to finish 2 buckets and 2 boxes of 8 joys? One word to describe it, torture. After Huajin got into the car, he looked ahead. Muyaja had packed Yun Shirshir into his personal car. He watched as he carefully buckled Yun Shirshir's seatbelt, got into the driver's seat, started the car and drove off. He couldn't take it anymore. He held his stomach and his face turned green. What the hell was this? This man was the #1 wife slave. This couple was really something. Instead of sleeping, they came to torment him in the middle of the night. In the end, why was he the one who got hurt? He was so innocent. In the car, Yun Shirshir nervously clutched her seatbelt as she gulped in trepidation. Hubby. Muyaja raised his eyebrows. What did you do to Huajin just now? Yun Shirshir asked worriedly. He sounded like he was in pain. How much ice cream did you feed him? Muyaja replied. All of it. Yun Shirshir asked. How much was all of it? Muyaja replied. 2 buckets and 2 boxes. Yun Shirshir shuddered. Just thinking about the feeling of eating so much ice cream didn't feel good, right? Suddenly, her obsession with ice cream was not as deep as before. She even felt a little nauseous. If she vomited, Muyaja's goal would be achieved. He asked, Do you still want ice cream? Yun Shirshir hurriedly shook her head. I don't want to anymore. == Muyaja suddenly reached out to hold her hand and intertwined his fingers with hers. Yun Shirshir's heart warmed, and she held his hand. Perhaps it was because he had been holding the ice cream bucket for a long time, but his hands were slightly cold. He didn't say anything, but from this small detail, she immediately understood his unease and heartache. He was such an introverted man who kept everything in his heart. Perhaps he cared too much about it. If you care too much, you will always be afraid of losing it. Therefore, his caution was only to better protect her. I'll be good in the future, Yun Shirshir said in a low voice. Yes, good girl. But, Yun Shirshir changed the topic. You fed him so much ice cream. Will anything happen to him? Muyaja was speechless. Yun Shirshir said anxiously, He'll definitely have diarrhea, right? In the bathroom. When Huajin walked out, he was about to collapse. He dragged his long numb legs out and supported himself against the wall. When he walked into the living room, the sky was already bright. In the living room, Muyaja walked out of the dining room and poured a cup of warm water for him. Drink it. Hua Jin took the water and leaned against the wall, looking resentful. I think I'm about to collapse. Muyaja raised his eyebrows. Diarrhea? Yes, a little. Muyaja returned to the room and took out a box of stomach medicine for him. Eat this. Chapter 2973. After this experience, Yun Shirshir became more well-behaved. At least she had learned her lesson. However, the days of nurturing the fetus were still boring. Yu found some radio dramas, musicals, and even crosstalk for her to pass the time. Life was peaceful and comfortable. Chief, did you know? The Mu Group recently released news of their wedding. Mu Yanqing is getting married to Song Inya soon. In the office, Lu Jinyu walked to Muyaja's desk and handed him a red announcement. He had gotten it from a media friend. It was said that Mu Yanqing and Song Inya's wedding would be held at 100 banquets. Furthermore, they had also invited celebrities from all walks of life, and more than 100 media outlets. It seemed that they were determined to make this wedding a grand and dignified one. Muyaja took the invitation and glanced at it expressionlessly. On the invitation was Song Inya and Mu Yanqing's wedding photo. The time and location were also written. He took a closer look. Although it was called a wedding photo, it was more accurate to say that this was not a traditional wedding photo. Song Inya was wearing a wedding dress and holding Mu Yanqing's arm. Mu Yanqing was wearing a suit. The two of them stood in front of a white background and posed for a photo. Oh. Lu Jinyu smiled. Chief, are you going? Muyaja glanced at him. Why should I go? To watch the show. It's boring. How can it be boring? The Mu Group and the Song family have been advocating that this wedding must be grand and dignified. At the very least, we should go and see how grand the Mu family can be so that Chief can refer to it. You and sister-in-law haven't held a wedding yet, right? We can't let our pomp and circumstance fall short. Muyaja smiled playfully. Pomp and circumstance? A wedding isn't just about pomp and circumstance. More importantly, it has to be memorable. They had to be sincere. Jiang Shun sat at the side and snorted. The reason why the Mu Group is spending so much money this time is because they want to use this wedding to revitalize the Mu Group's reputation. Just like a destitute aristocrat who is so poor that he has to empty his family's fortune, he has to resort to all means to pretend to be a noble. Lu Jinyu snapped his fingers and said, to put it simply, it's just posturing. Jiang Shun said, bingo. Muyaja frowned. Although the Mu Group is in dire straits, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. After all, its power is still stable. Don't let your guard down. Lu Jinyu said, boss, aren't you bent on monopolizing the Mu Corporation's medical industry? Yes. Jiang Shun analyzed. However, if we forcibly acquire the medical industry under Mu Group, we will definitely suffer a great loss. The Mu Group was now very close to this industry. Although Mu Yanqing was now the head of the Mu Group in name, the real power in the family was still in the hands of Mu Linfeng. If not for Mu Linfeng's hard work, what can Mu Yanqing achieve? Lu Jinyu said. That old fox Mu Linfeng is not a simple character. He's not easy to deal with. However, given Mu Yanqing's half-baked personality, when Mu Linfeng really collapsed, the Mu family's throne would also crumble in an instant. He won't be able to stay in that position for long. All these years, Mu Linfeng's health doesn't seem to be improving. In such a situation, we can play many cards. Chapter 2974. Jiang Shun took a sip of tea and said casually, however, Mu Linfeng is headstrong and self-opinionated. He can't keep people around at all. Otherwise, Chief wouldn't have taken so many talents away from the Mu Group so easily. Are you done with your work? Muyaja interrupted. Lu Jinyu and Jiang Shun looked at each other and immediately stood up to head to their offices. Muyaja glanced at the wedding invitation again and threw it into the trash can. Ming City's villa. Meng Qingxue was sitting on the sofa with the wedding invitation in her hand. She flipped open a page and saw a wedding photo of Mu Yanqing and Song Inya on it. She felt that it was an eyesore. Mu Yanqing and Song Inya's wedding was imminent. She had questioned Mu Yanqing more than once, not understanding why he wanted to marry Song Inya. However, Mu Yanqing smiled and said, Inya, don't worry. This time I won't let you down. Then how do you explain this wedding invitation? Mu Yanqing only said, you'll understand when the time comes. Meng Qingxue was baffled by his words, but she still chose to believe him without hesitation. She hoped that he would not disappoint her this time. It was not that she was too blind, but she had seen every change in Mu Yanqing. Ever since they returned to the capital from Yen City, Mu Yanqing had spent almost every night with her. He said that he would arrange for her to stay in a villa to recuperate, so he arranged a private villa for her to recuperate. He also assigned 5 servants and a nanny to take care of her daily needs. Meng Qingxue followed his instructions and focused on recuperating. She was well taken care of. In the past 2 months she had unknowingly gained 5 kilograms of weight. It was rare for her to gain weight. No matter how much she ate, it was difficult for her to gain half a kilogram of weight. It was clear how well she was taken care of. Not only that, he was afraid that she would be lonely. Occasionally when he was free he would bring her around the park, the lakeside, and even drove her to interesting places for a road trip. Perhaps it was because he had almost lost her. But compared to his past indifference toward her, Mu Yanqing cherished her even more now. It turned out that the feeling of being cherished was so blissful. Meng Qingxue originally told herself that if she loved him, half of his love was enough. She shouldn't love him too deeply. She shouldn't love him more than he did. Otherwise she would be the one suffering. However, being wrapped in such tenderness, she seemed to have fallen into it once again. Mu Yanqing would accompany her to every prenatal checkup without exception. That morning, Mu Yanqing specially applied for leave for the usual prenatal checkup. He did not attend the meeting in the morning and drove her to the hospital. Sitting in the car, Meng Qingxue said a little embarrassedly, "You always take time off to accompany me for prenatal checkups. Won't anyone criticize you?" Mu Yanqing replied, "I'll be worried if someone else comes with you." Meng Qingxue's heart warmed when she heard this. The corners of her lips curled up as fireworks seemed to explode in her heart. When they arrived at the hospital, Mu Yanqing helped her out of the car and into the gynecology department. After accompanying her through various checkups, he helped her to a chair and said to her, "I'll line up to get the report. Wait for me here." "Okay." Mu Yanqing smiled and handed her the mineral water he had bought before turning to line up. Chapter 2975. Meng Qingxue sat quietly at the same spot and waited. She was bored, so she took out the half-finished cloth shoes from her bag. When she was pregnant, she had nothing to do at home, so she learned how to do handicrafts. From the child's knitted shirt to the cloth shoes, she thought that the clothes she knitted would look better on the child, so she wanted to do everything herself. Anyway, she had nothing to do. She was usually busy with these handicrafts, so she enjoyed it. Halfway through her knitting, she suddenly heard a woman gritting her teeth behind her. "Meng Qingxue?" Meng Qingxue turned her head when she heard someone calling her name, only to meet Song Enya's gaze by chance. As the saying goes, enemies meet on a narrow road. This was probably it. Meng Qingxue did not expect that Song Enya would come to the same hospital as her for a prenatal checkup on this day. However, unlike her, Song Enya was accompanied by Jiang Qiming. Jiang Qiming also went to line up to receive the report, leaving Song Enya sitting on the stool and waiting. Song Enya was furious when she saw her. She did not even need to think about who was accompanying this woman for a prenatal checkup. When she thought of how Mu Yanqing was accompanying and taking good care of her, what about herself? She could only let Jiang Qiming accompany her for a prenatal checkup. She was alone, and her heart was filled with hatred. She stood up at once and walked up to Meng Qingxue. Her vicious gaze landed on her slightly bulging belly and she narrowed her eyes. It was said that this woman was also 5 months pregnant. Ever since Meng Qingxue returned to the capital, she had thought of ways to look for her. The hateful thing was that Mu Yanqing had protected her very well. No matter how much she asked, she could not find out where she had gone. She only knew that Mu Yanqing had been accompanying her and taking care of her. He was with her every night. Just this matter alone was enough to make her feel especially unbalanced in her heart. On what basis? She was his fiancée. Even if there were no feelings, she was pregnant with his flesh and blood. As a father, shouldn't he ask about her and show some concern? Song Enya felt bitter in her heart. When Meng Qingxue saw her, her heart skipped a beat, and a contemptuous expression appeared on her face. "So it's you." She smiled arrogantly and coldly. "Are you here for a prenatal checkup too?" "Meng Qingxue, how dare you say that?" Song Enya did not bother to hide her anger as she pointed a finger at her. Are you feeling smug? You feel a sense of accomplishment for interfering in someone else's marriage, don't you? Meng Qingxue was stunned. Song Enya's loud voice attracted the attention of the people around her. The people who came here were all pregnant women who came for a prenatal checkup. As soon as they heard this sentence, everyone's curiosity was suddenly gathered. Everyone looked in their direction, only to see two people, one standing and one sitting, angrily confronting each other. Meng Qingxue sneered. I don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what I'm talking about. Song Enya paused. Has Mu Yanqing been with you for the past 2 months? Meng Qingxue retorted. What does that have to do with you? I'm his wife. What do you think it has to do with me? Chapter 2976. When the crowd heard this, they immediately understood what was going on. It turned out that this indignant woman was the first wife, and this pitiful and innocent woman sitting in the seat was the mistress. How long has it been since I last saw my husband? When I was pregnant as my husband, he didn't stay by my side to take care of me. Instead, he stayed by his mistress' side day and night, taking care of her and loving her. What am I to him? Meng Qingxue was startled. She looked around and saw that the people around her were looking at her, pointing at her and gossiping about her. Tisk tsk tsk. Mistresses nowadays are really too arrogant. This first wife is really pitiful. She's pregnant, but he's not by her side to take care of her. Is the mistress pregnant too? Look at her. If she's not pregnant, why would she be here? She's probably here for a prenatal checkup. Looking at her belly, she should be 5 months pregnant. The mistress and the first wife are both pregnant. How rare. How much of a scumbag is this man? He actually made his wife and mistress pregnant at the same time. It's too disgusting. She bit her lower lip hard and glared at the missy furiously. This woman was really vicious. She actually wanted to use public opinion to criticize and suppress her. Song Enya continued. You guys don't know, right? My husband and I are getting married next month, but this woman is obviously trying to disgust me. I don't know what method she used to keep my husband by her side. She must have whispered something into my husband's ear. It's been 2 months. My husband has never asked me a single question, nor has he ever come to see me or the child. I really don't know what to do. At the end of her sentence, her eyes turned red. She covered her face with her hands and let out a sad sob. When everyone heard this, they were filled with righteous indignation and started insulting her. This woman is really shameless. Why is a mistress so disgusting? I think she's quite pretty. She can have any man she wants. Why does she have to cling on to someone else? Maybe this man is rich. Isn't this the way of the world now? Any man with a little money is easy to become arrogant. He doesn't fall at home, but outside he's arrogant. Just like the emperors of ancient times. A mistress is despicable, and a husband is even more despicable. It's better not to marry such a man. Song Enya wiped her tears and said, There's nothing we can do even if we regret it. We already have a child. We can't let the child be born without a father, right? Yeah, that's a problem. Some of the older people couldn't stand it. They pointed at Meng Qingxue and said, If you have a conscience, don't cling on to someone else's husband. As for the child in your belly, hurry up and abort it. What's hers is hers. Even if you snatch it away, can you still have a clear conscience? Exactly. She was a good girl. Why did she interfere in someone else's marriage? You will suffer retribution for doing this. Meng Qingxue suddenly raised her head and said in a deep voice, I'm not a mistress. Song Enya glared at her. What did you say? I said. Meng Qingxue suddenly stood up and stood face to face with her. I'm not a mistress. You are. When everyone heard this, they were shocked again. This situation could not help but become a little chaotic. Some people could not understand what was going on. Chapter 2977. Meng Qingxue sneered and looked straight at Song Enya as she said word by word. Song Enya, you're the third party who came between Yanqing and me. What did you say? Isn't that so? Meng Qingxue said coldly. I was the one who got together with Yanqing in the beginning. What about you? Yes, I admit that you're going to marry him, but don't think that I don't know what tricks you used. Song Enya's face turned pale as she said, Don't spout nonsense. Who are you calling a third party? You. Meng Qingshua's eyes were cold as she thought to herself, are we competing in acting? Song Enya, you've been scheming against me all this while. You've been pressuring me step by step and using underhanded means to harm me. You've even threatened my unborn child. You're vicious and merciless, but I won't back down anymore. At the thought of this, Meng Qingxue smiled coldly and straightened her back, giving off a feeling that she would not tolerate any violation or blasphemy. She looked around and said, even if you want to be the righteous ones, you have to get to the bottom of the matter before you blame others. Do you really believe what she said? Do you know how the child in her stomach came about? Before Song Enya could say anything, Meng Qingxue continued. Yes, I admit that Yanqing is your fiancé now, but Yanqing originally belonged to me. The person he loves is me, and the child in my stomach is different from the child in your stomach. The child in my stomach was given to me by Yanqing, but the child in your belly was stolen by you. What? Everyone was shocked when they heard this. How could the child in her stomach be stolen? What do you mean? How could the child be stolen? I don't understand. Song Enya immediately understood what she was going to say. She was so angry that her entire body trembled. Shut up. Why? Miss Song, are you feeling guilty now? Don't you want everyone to be the judge for you? Why don't you tell us how the child in your stomach came about, so that everyone can judge who is right and who is wrong? Shut up. Song Enya barked. Meng Qingxue smiled, but did not take her warning seriously. She turned around and said to everyone, you don't know, right? The woman standing before you is the mayor's daughter, Song Enya. Song Enya. Ah, I read in the newspapers that our mayor, Song Zhenghua, has a total of 3 children. The second daughter is called Song Enya. I heard that she came from a prestigious school and is highly educated. She also has outstanding looks. So it's the mayor's daughter. Meng Qingxue continued. The child in her belly is a test tube baby conceived through artificial insemination. As for where did this sperm come from? She stole it from the sperm bank. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd went into an uproar. Stolen? How is that possible? Meng Qingxue said coldly. It's indeed hard to believe. She comes from a prestigious family and is the mayor's woman. She's talented and beautiful. Why would she do such a despicable thing? Song Enya screamed hysterically at her. Be asterisk, I told you to shut up. Didn't you hear me? With that, she pounced on Meng Qingxue and reached out to grab her hair. Meng Qingxue took a step back and protected her stomach. She raised her hand and slapped her hand away. Chapter 2978. The scene instantly turned chaotic. Perhaps Song Enya had been greatly agitated by her words, so much so that her eyes were bloodshot as she scratched and hit her. Meng Qingxue was not to be trifled with either. Perhaps out of maternal instinct, she covered her stomach with one hand and grabbed Song Enya's hair with the other, pulling it fiercely. The two of them fought. The surrounding passers-by watched in fear, but most of them were just there to watch the show. Many of them were pregnant. Seeing such a scene, who would dare to come forward to mediate? Jiang Qiming returned with the report and saw that there was a fight in the seats. When she took a closer look, she saw that one of them was Song Enya. She was so frightened that she threw the report in her hand and rushed forward. Stop fighting! Stop fighting! Jiang Qiming finally separated the two of them. She pulled Song Enya aside and asked anxiously, is anything wrong? Mom, don't stop me. I want to teach this little bee asterisk a lesson. As Song Enya spoke, she wanted to rush forward again. Afraid that she would hurt herself, Jiang Qiming pulled her back and reprimanded her. What are you doing? Think about it, you're already 5 months pregnant. It's not like before. Even if you don't think for yourself, you should think for the child in your stomach. How can you be so willful? Song Enya turned her head and stretched out her hand with a ferocious expression. With reddened eyes, she pointed at Meng Qingxue, who was standing 2 meters away with a guarded look on her face. She cried, Mom! She's Meng Qingxue. She's that bee asterisk tc. For the past 2 months, Mu Yanqing hasn't cared about me and has always been by her side. How can I not be angry? She even said that I'm a third party. Mom, how can I not be angry? Alright, be careful. Don't affect the baby. She was busy calming her emotions when she suddenly reacted and glared at her in surprise. What did you say? She's that Meng Qingxue? Jiang Qiming turned her head and stared fixedly at Meng Qingxue. Her gaze was as sharp as a knife as it pierced her. Are you Meng Qingxue? Meng Qingxue glanced at the woman. Based on their earlier conversation, she could roughly guess her identity. She was Song Inya's mother. She covered her lower abdomen with one hand and was on full alert. Where is Mu Yanchen? Jiang Qiming yelled. Where is he? His fiancée is already 5 months pregnant, but he doesn't care about her at all. He only cares about you, you be *T. Meng Qingxue said angrily. I'm not a bitch. Auntie, please show some respect when you speak. As the mayor's wife, you don't have any manners at all. Jiang Qiming was stunned. She looked around and saw many people pointing in their direction. Only then did she realize that they were in public, and she indeed had to be careful. Thinking of this, she walked towards Meng Qingxue and said, Come with me. I have something to talk to you about. Seeing her glaring at her, Meng Qingxue quickly shook her head. I won't go with you. I want to stay here and wait for Yanchen. I told you to come with us. Did you hear me? Jiang Qiming's tone became sharper. This is our private matter. There's no need to talk about it in public. No matter what, we have to wait until Yanchen comes back, right? Meng Qingxue was very smart. Chapter 2979. Meng Qingxue knew very well that she was weak and alone. Without Mu Yanqing's protection, she was nothing. Seeing the stalemate, Jiang Qiming became even angrier. However, she was determined to settle this matter tonight no matter what. Usually, Mu Yanqing hid this little vixen so well that she could not find any clues. Now that they had bumped into each other on a narrow path, how could he let her go? At the thought of this, Jiang Qiming strode up to Meng Qingxue and grabbed her arm, not allowing her to say anything. Little b *tch, I'm telling you. No matter what, you have to leave with me today. We have to settle the score between you and Enya. I'm not leaving. Come with me. Amid the tussle between the two, Mu Yanqing returned with the report in his hand. He caught sight of a group of people surrounding them with Song Enya and Jiang Qiming standing in the middle. When he saw Jiang Qiming tugging at Meng Qingxue's arm with all her might, he immediately rushed up and threw Jiang Qiming aside. He stood in front of Meng Qingxue to protect her and swept a cold glance at them. What are you doing? When Song Enya saw him, she was even angrier. When she saw him standing on Meng Qingxue's side without a second thought, she felt even more embarrassed and could not tell right from wrong. Mu Yanqing, what do you mean by this? Please be clear about who your fiancé is. It's not her. It's me. The person you're marrying is also me. Song Enya yelled at him at the top of her lungs. What do you mean by this? What does she mean by this? When Jiang Qiming saw him, her attitude softened a little. She sighed and said, Yanqing, you and Enya are getting married next month. Now that you're circling around this woman, what position do you place Enya in? Back then, I wasn't the one who insisted on marrying your daughter. When Mu Yanqing recalled how the mother-daughter pair had been eyeing Meng Qingxue covetously earlier, he could not help but feel angry. He said coldly, I clearly don't have any feelings for your daughter. She's the one who wants to marry me. I told her back then that I can marry her, but she has no right to interfere in my private affairs. This is a treaty, and I made it very clear. You're having an affair, Song Enya accused. Logically speaking, this shouldn't exist. Mu Yanqing could not help reminding her. Song Enya, we're not married yet. But our wedding is next month. Song Enya fumed. Why? All I want is a loyal marriage and a loving husband. Can't I get it? Do you have the right to do that? He paused for a moment before adding, if you don't want this disloyal marriage, you can call it off at any time. I don't mind. Mind? Song Enya looked at him in disbelief. She could not believe that he would say such a thing. For a moment, countless fragmented scenes flashed through her mind. She had worked so hard to get what she wanted, but in the end, she did not get anything. She had racked her brains to get Muyaja. She did not hesitate to go through extreme pain and bear all the humiliation to get pregnant with Muyaja's child so that she could marry him. In the end, she realized that she was the one who was being played. Chapter 2980. In the end, what happened? Yun Shishir, whom she hated the most, was now being doted on by Muyaja. She was as blissful as she could be. A while ago, A media reporter reported that Yoon Shirshir had lost her eyesight due to that accident. Her eyes were injured and she was now recuperating at home. It was also said that because of Gu Xing's incident, Yoon Shirshir was depressed and had no appetite. She almost lost the child in her stomach. However, she saw the paparazzi secretly taking photos of Yoon Shirshir wearing a mask and accompanied by Mu Yaja to the hospital for a prenatal checkup. She was all smiles the entire time. When Mu Yaja looked at her, even though the pixels of the photos were blurry, she could still feel his doting behavior, as if he was protecting a child. She hated it. Why did some people get happiness so easily, but what about her? Thinking about Yoon Shirshir, Meng Qingxue, and herself, Song Inya's heart suddenly turned cold and she felt so pitiful. She clenched her fists and suddenly walked toward Meng Qingxue. Grabbing her hand, she asked Mu Yanqing, "Why do you like such a woman? What are you doing?" Mu Yanqing tried to block her hand, but Song Inya pushed him away abruptly. Looking at Meng Qingxue with a ferocious expression, she said arrogantly, "I don't know where this little wild model came from. In terms of family background and looks, how can such a lowlife compare to her? How am I inferior to her? Why are you protecting her like this? Don't you know? Your second uncle will never let her step into the Mu family's door." Mu Yanqing was taken aback by her words. "Don't tell me you've forgotten why your second brother was chased out of the Mu family." Song Inya's eyes were red as she gritted her teeth and said, "It's because he insisted on being with Yoon Shirshir. But your second uncle is proud and arrogant. The Mu family's threshold is so high that it's not something that a slut of unknown origin can step into. If you insist on keeping this trash, have you not thought about the consequences?" She paused for a moment before continuing, "Your second brother loves beauty so much that he's willing to give up the Mu family's empire. But he was different. He was capable and had a business mind. Even if he left the Mu family, he would still be able to make a name for himself. Now that he had established the Shengyu Financial Group, he could still maintain his glory. What about you, Mu Yanqing? Don't forget what you relied on to become the head of the Mu Jia. Ask yourself, if you leave the Mu family, what are you? You're nothing." Mu Yanqing's face paled as he was agitated by her attack. But what she said was the truth. If he left the Mu family, he would have nothing. He's not like Mu Yaja. Mu Yaja had a genius business mind since he was young. Even when he was still the CEO of the Mu Group, although he was controlled by Mu Linfeng on the surface. Who was Mu Linfeng? It was not an exaggeration to describe him as a sly old fox. He actually managed to empty more than half of the Mu Group behind Mu Linfeng's back. Although it was said that he was chased out of the family, this was only the Mu family's side of the story. What was the truth? He left in a carefree manner and became the chairman and CEO of the Shengyu Financial Group in a grand manner. He was still a glorious legend. As for him, Mu Linfeng would not let Meng Qingxue step into the Mu family. Chapter 2981. Although he was the head of the family, the real power was still in the hands of Mu Linfeng. What Mu Linfeng wanted was only a puppet and a facade. His current extravagant lifestyle was being held down humbly by the Mu family. If he left the Mu family, he would really have nothing. Don't you want to think about it properly? Song Inya pointed at Meng Qingxue and questioned him. For such a woman, is it really worth it to follow Mu Yaja's example and give up the position of the Mu family head? Mu Yanqing glanced at Meng Qingxue. He could not be chased out of the Mu group. He wanted to give Meng Qingxue and the child in her womb the best life possible. However, all of this was given to him by the Mu group. Once he left the Mu group, he would have nothing. Meng Qingxue looked at him anxiously. As if she could see through his struggle, she smiled and said, "Yanqing, don't listen to her. Even if you leave the Mu group, you won't have nothing. Don't you still have me? And the child in my womb? How can you have nothing?" Song Inya rebuked angrily. "Shut up. You're the one who should shut up." Meng Qingxue yelled at her before turning to Mu Yanqing. "Yanqing, don't you understand me? I know that you want to give me the best life possible. However, everyone has a different definition of happiness. Some women want to live in a big villa and have a bodyguard around them 24/7. However, I only want you. You're enough. Even if you really have nothing, it's fine." After a pause, she choked and said, "On the contrary, I feel that if you really have nothing, I can protect and love you with more peace of mind. That's because I don't have to care about what others think. And I don't have to be suspected of having ulterior motives for loving you. I love you, but I only love you as a person. Nothing else is important. Io, that's so touching. Do you really think that Yanqing will give up the Mu group for you? Song Enya pinched her chin and said aggressively, don't you know how long he's been coveting everything he's gotten today? Don't you know? How long had he yearned for this day? Now that he has obtained everything, do you really think he will be willing to give it up again? What a joke. You. After a pause, she added, it's easy for you to say that, but don't you know that a poor couple has many sorrows? What Mu Yanqing wanted had always been obvious, so he would naturally make the right choice. It's not your turn to fan the flames here. Song Enya. Meng Qingxue glared at her and suddenly sneered. I heard that in order to get pregnant with Mu Yaja's child, you did not hesitate to undergo artificial insemination. However, you didn't expect that Mu Yaja would swap your semen for Yanqing's. By a freak combination of factors, you got pregnant with Yanqing's child. So, is this what you want as well? Song Enya's face turned ugly. Shut up. Her gaze suddenly landed on Meng Qingshua's stomach. A cruel glint flashed across her eyes as she curled the corners of her lips into a bloodthirsty smile. Do you think that with the child in your stomach, you can become a mother because of the child? You're delusional. I'd like to see how you're going to strut around in front of me if you don't have this child. As she said that, she suddenly stretched out her hand and grabbed at her stomach. No. Chapter 2982. Meng Qingxue was so frightened that her face turned pale. She hurriedly retreated, but Song Enya pounced on her like a madwoman and wrestled with her again. She wanted to destroy this child. When that time came, let's see how a fallen woman like Meng Qingxue could stir up trouble. Mu Yanqing finally reacted. Without thinking, he rushed over and separated the two people who were wrestling. He stood in front of Meng Qingxue and pointed at Song Enya. He said sternly, Song Enya, are you a shrew? I've already warned you time and time again that you shouldn't pester me endlessly without knowing what's right or wrong. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. Shrew? Are you calling me a shrew? Song Enya widened her eyes in shock. She could not believe that he would say that about her. Shrew. No one had ever described her like that since she was a child. If you dare to touch a single strand of Qingshue's hair, I won't let you off. Mu Yanqing's next words thoroughly infuriated Song Enya. She nodded. Her eyes were sharp as she said in a trembling voice. All right. Mu Yanqing, you're amazing. You're really amazing. I'd like to see what you can do to me if I get rid of this B** starred in this woman's stomach. With that, she rushed hysterically toward Meng Qingxue and pushed Mu Yanqing with all her might. Her eyes were bloodshot. Seeing that Meng Qingxue was about to be pushed to the ground, Mu Yanqing was concerned about the child in her stomach. Without thinking too much, he supported Meng Qingxue and pulled her into his arms. With his other hand, he pushed Song Enya protectively. Song Enya put all her strength into her hand, so when Mu Yanqing pushed her, she could not maintain her balance at all and her body leaned back. Mu Yanqing only heard Jiang Qiming scream. The next second, he heard the sound of something falling heavily to the ground. Her bag fell to the ground, and the skincare products and phone inside scattered on the ground. Then the sound of people gasping could be heard from all around. Meng Qingxue was also taken aback. Mu Yanqing hugged her and followed her line of sight, only to be horrified to see Song Enya lying on the ground. Her contorted features showed how much pain she was in. Jiang Qiming immediately ran over and helped her up. Concerned, she asked, Are you all right? Song Enya's face was ghastly pale as beads of cold sweat broke out on her forehead. Jiang Qiming flew into a rage out of humiliation. Pointing at Mu Yanqing, she yelled, Mu Yanqing, are you crazy? Enya is also pregnant with your child. What do you mean by this? Mom! Beside her, Song Enya's feeble voice interrupted her helplessly. She clutched Jiang Qiming's sleeve tightly as she sobbed weakly. Mom, it hurts. Someone screamed. It's bleeding. Jiang Qiming looked at her legs in shock, only to see two streams of viscous liquid flowing down her inner thighs slowly. Enya! Why are you bleeding? Song Enya's face turned even paler when she heard that she was bleeding. She only felt a sharp pain in her stomach, as if something in her body was falling hard. She followed Jiang Qiming's gaze and looked down. When she saw the drops of blood on the ground, she was so anxious that she was about to cry. Meng Qingxue was also shocked by this scene, and her face turned ugly. Chapter 2983. Song Inya was afraid and in despair. She was 5 months pregnant, so it was not like she did not have any feelings for the child in her stomach. Furthermore, this was her last bargaining chip and bet. If she lost it, she would not know what to do. Mu Yanqing, why are you so heartless? Jiang Qiming questioned. The people around them immediately said, hurry and send her to the emergency room. Yes. The nurse rushed over when she heard the news and pushed Song Inya to the emergency room. Meng Qingshue's breathing quickened. She grabbed Mu Yanqing's sleeve and asked worriedly, will something happen to Song Inya? I don't know. Mu Yanqing did not know how to reply to her, because even his mind was in a mess. Meng Qingxue asked cautiously, what if the child in her stomach can't be saved? Will you be sad? No. Mu Yanqing sneered. That child shouldn't exist. It's her own fault and she deserves it. I didn't want to push her. It's her. I'm afraid that she'll hurt you. As he spoke, his breathing suddenly quickened. Mu Yanqing looked down at his hands. It was these hands that had pushed Song Inya away earlier. If the child really could not be saved, it must be because of him. But I didn't push her on purpose. He didn't do it on purpose. He didn't want to hurt her. Meng Qingshue's heart ached. She hugged him tightly and said sadly, Yanqing, don't think about it. I know I saw it. You didn't want to hurt her. You were trying to protect me. Don't blame yourself. Mu Yanqing hugged her and closed his eyes weakly. Outside the operating theater, Jiang Qiming had been sitting for a long time. When Mu Yanqing and Meng Qingxue walked over, she looked up and saw them. She stood up agitatedly and pounced on Meng Qingxue. It's all your fault. It's all your fault, you little b****. The doctor said that the child might not be saved. If it weren't for you, if it weren't for you. As she spoke, she was about to slap Meng Qingxue. Mu Yanqing shielded Meng Qingxue with his body and pushed Jiang Qiming away. Auntie, calm down. Please conduct yourself with dignity. Jiang Qiming's eyes were bloodshot. Mu Yanqing, are you still going to protect her? If the child doesn't survive, it has nothing to do with her. Mu Yanqing said agitatedly, I'm responsible for this. I'll take responsibility for my own actions. If you have any dissatisfaction, just come at me. Jiang Qiming nodded and said in a trembling voice, okay. You're a man, you're a responsible man. Why are you going as mother? What if she's lost her child? What? She questioned him as she punched his chest. Just then the door suddenly opened. Jiang Qiming turned around anxiously and saw the doctor walking out. She immediately went up to him and asked worriedly, Doctor, how is my daughter? Madam, please calm down a little. Please calm down. I'm really sorry that the child couldn't be saved. I'm sorry. Jiang Qiming's eyes widened when she heard this. She fell to the ground weakly and could not get up no matter how the nurse tried to help her. Soon the operating table was pushed out. Song Inya had just finished a curettage. As she was 5 months pregnant, the anesthesia from last night's curettage had slowly worn off. She endured the pain as her face was covered in cold sweat. Chapter 2984. Jiang Qiming's heart ached as she rushed forward. She held onto the bed and looked at her. How do you feel? Does it hurt a lot? Where's the baby? Song Inya asked in a trembling voice. Is the baby still here? As she spoke, she raised her heavy hand to touch her stomach, only to feel a flat area. Her tears fell uncontrollably. When Meng Qingxue heard this, her face froze for a moment. She felt the man's back stiffen and her heart plummet. In the ward, Song Inya had fallen asleep after being injected with a sedative. Mu Yanqing sat outside the door while Meng Qingxue sat beside him, never leaving his side. He originally wanted to send her home first, but Meng Qingxue said that no matter what, she wanted to be with him and not go anywhere. Mu Yanqing could not do anything about it, so he let her be. When Mu Shumin received the news, he rushed to the hospital. When he reached the door of the ward, he saw Mu Yanqing and Meng Qingxue sitting together with him. He frowned slightly, walked over, and glanced at them coldly. Mu Yanqing did not notice her. His head was lowered, and he seemed to be thinking about something. He did not hear Mu Shumen's footsteps coming over. It was Meng Qingxue who reacted and nudged him gently. He looked up and was surprised to see Mu Shumen. "Why are you here? Don't ask me first." As Mu Shumen said this, he glanced at Meng Qingxue from the corner of his eye, seemingly hinting at something. "Shouldn't you explain who this is?" "Auntie, I'll tell you about her later." As Mu Yanqing said this, he stood up and said to Mu Shumen, "Song Enya had a miscarriage." "A miscarriage?" "Yes. The child is gone." When Mu Shumen heard this news, his expression changed. Looking at the guilty look on his face, he seemed to have guessed something and asked tentatively, "Song Enya's child is gone. Is it related to you?" Mu Yanqing took a deep breath. "I accidentally pushed her and she fell to the ground. The child was lost." "You?" Mu Shumen was furious and questioned him. "Why were you so careless when you knew that she was pregnant?" "I didn't do it on purpose. She seemed to have gone crazy and pounced on Qingxue. I saw that she was like a shrew, so without thinking I wanted to push her away. In the end I didn't control of my strength. In the end, it's all because of this woman, right?" "Yes." You. Meng Qingxue. Mu Yanqing said unhappily, "Don't spout nonsense." Mu Shumen interrupted him again and warned coldly, "Don't forget how you became the head of the family." Mu Yanqing fell silent and his face turned ashen. "Don't tell me you want to imitate your second brother, and have a second Yun Shishir. Then, learn from him and hand over the position of the family head to someone else." Chapter 2985. Auntie. If it's an unnecessary explanation, I don't want to hear it. Mu Shumen was obviously infuriated by him. When she received a call saying that something had happened to Song Enya, she immediately rushed to the hospital. On the way there, she found out that it was this troublesome nephew of hers who had caused Song Enya's miscarriage. She was even more baffled. Why did such a thing happen all of a sudden? Back then, Mu Yanqing had promised her that in order to become the head of the Mu family, he had analyzed the pros and cons clearly. Mu Shumen had also made a pact with him. This concubine could be married into the family, but he had to mediate the relationship between the concubine and the main wife. But he, on the other hand, had caused such a foul atmosphere. Once she arrived at the hospital and saw Meng Qingxue, she roughly figured out what was going on from the beginning to the end. Mu Shumen was afraid that if Mu Yanqing were to emulate Mu Yaja and choose a woman over the family, then all her efforts would go down the drain. "Yanqing, I'll say the ugly things first. Meng Qingxue can be a concubine, but if she breaks the rules of the Mu group, you know what I'm capable of. Don't blame me for not warning you earlier." Mu Shumen's words were harsher. Mu Yanqing glanced at Meng Qingxue, and then at Mu Shumen before slowly nodding his head. Only then was Mu Shumen satisfied and entered the ward. Meng Qingxue kept her head lowered and remained silent. Her mind kept replaying Mu Shumen's words. She had a feeling that this woman's methods were extremely ruthless. She could not help but worry. It was not easy for her to win Mu Yanqing's heart. Would he waver again because of Mu Shumen's words? Mu Shumen walked into the ward, straightened her face, and walked to the bed with a worried look. "Is that lass Enya all right?" When Jiang Qiming saw her, she finally had a place to vent her grievances, so she cried and complained to her. She recounted everything that had happened. Jiang Qiming cried and complained, "Our Enya is from a prestigious family after all. Is it wrong for Yanqing to marry our Enya? But he's great. Enya hasn't married into the family yet, and he already can't wait to get a mistress. It's not that the Songs don't know the rules of the Mu group, but a concubine should at least wait until Enya is married, right? She hasn't married into the family yet, aunts, and she's already here. What will happen after she's married? Then wouldn't little 4 and little 5 have to stand in a row?" "Mu Shumen, you're right. Is there any reason?" On the surface, Mu Shumen remained calm and expressed her understanding, but in her heart, she thought to herself, this Mu Yanqing marrying Enya might not be aggrieved, but he won't get anything out of it either. In her eyes, Song Enya was a withered flower that Mu Yaja did not want. Seeing that Mu Yaja could not get her, she turned around and wanted to get close to Yanqing. She even felt wronged for Yanqing. How could Jiang Qiming come here to complain? However, this thought remained in her heart. Mu Shumen smiled gently and said, "Qiming, What are you talking about? Speaking of which, I know that Enya has been wrong this time. If the child is gone, then so be it. Even if it's gone, there'll be plenty of time in the future after she marries into the family. She'll still have children. Chapter 2986. Now that the child is gone, is this marriage still valid? Of course it's still valid. Mu Shumin exchanged pleasantries, but she was gnashing her teeth in anger. This Jiang Qiming actually knew how to negotiate with her. This woman had it all planned out. Wasn't she just worried that Mu Yanqing would go back on his word and refuse to marry her after losing the child? Mu Shumin was furious, but she could not make things too awkward in public. Moreover, on the way here, Mu Linfeng called and asked her to calm the emotions of Jiang Qiming and Song Enya. She did not understand why she always had to clean up such messes. When Jiang Qiming heard Mu Shumin's words, the uneasiness in her heart dissipated slightly. She was worried that Mu Yanqing would have a reason to call off this marriage if Song Enya's child was gone. However, the news had already been released and the invitations had been sent out. If they were to announce halfway through that the marriage was not going to happen, wouldn't it be a huge embarrassment for the Song family? She did not know how to explain this matter to Song Zhenghua. If he found out that the child was gone, wouldn't he blame her for not taking good care of his daughter? She would not be able to clear her name even if she jumped into the Yellow River. Mu Shumin sat in the ward for a while. After a while, she made a call and took the initiative to summon the hospital's director over, instructing him to take good care of Song Enya. This hospital was also one of the Mu Group's businesses, so the hospital naturally obeyed her instructions. After giving her instructions, Mu Shumin left the ward. Mu Yanqing and Meng Qingxue were still sitting at the door. Before she left, she glanced at Mu Yanqing and then at Meng Qingxue and said indifferently, "I think you're out of your mind. You caused such a thing for a little b*tc. I'll give you time to weigh the pros and cons in your heart. Yanqing, the Mu Group doesn't need you. However, you're nothing without the Mu Group. You'd better cut ties with this little b*tc as soon as possible." With that, Mu Shumin left without looking back. Meng Qingxue felt that all of these words were extremely harsh to her ears. This Mu Shumin was really too arrogant. What right did she have to insult her like this? Meng Qingxue looked at Mu Yanqing aggrievedly, only to see him sitting there with a pale face. His eyes were dark and gloomy, as if he was contemplating something or hesitating about something. She couldn't help but feel uneasy. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could do so, Mu Yanqing suddenly stood up with a livid expression and left in a hurry. Meng Qingxue couldn't care about anything else. She quickly stood up and chased after him. "Yanqing! Yanqing!" Mu Yanqing walked to the entrance of the hospital without a word. When he raised his head and saw the glaring sunlight, an inexplicable sense of humiliation rose in his heart. He suddenly clenched his fist and smashed it hard on the stone pillar at the entrance. His tightly clenched fist was instantly drenched in blood. Meng Qingxue chased after him. When she saw him repeatedly smashing his fist on the stone pillar, she rushed up in horror and hugged his arm. "Yanqing, what are you doing?" Mu Yanqing flung her hand away and walked to the side angrily with a sharp gaze. He hated himself for not fighting for it. When Mu Yaja was still the CEO of the Mu Group, he was high and mighty and dazzling. Everyone was respectful and obedient to him without hesitation. What about him? Chapter 2987. On the surface, Mu Linfeng seemed to think highly of him, but in reality, he was just like a regent in ancient times. On the other hand, he was like a puppet emperor. On the surface, he could summon the wind and summon the rain, but he had no real power at all. Unfortunately, he could not leave the Mu Group. Mu Yanqing felt extremely vexed. In particular, Mu Shumin's reprimand earlier made him feel even worse. He was increasingly aware that he was being used. Ever since he took over, the Mu Group's economy had been constantly declining. If it were not for the support of the Mu Group's biggest industry, the medical industry, they would have been burdened with tens of billions of debt long ago. Mu Linfeng was mentally and physically exhausted because of the financial group's affairs, but when he wanted to intervene in the Mu Group's affairs, Mu Linfeng did not let him. He could only sit in the luxurious office that symbolized the highest authority, but he was essentially reduced to a vassal. It was not that he was not resigned, but there was nothing he could do. Even he himself felt that he was too useless. He felt that he did not have any dignity to speak of, especially in front of Meng Qingxue. Mu Shumen ridiculed and mocked him, which made him feel even worse. Meng Qingxue walked to his side. When she touched his hand, Mu Yanqing sensitively let go of her hand and turned his face away. She was shocked. Yanqing, what's wrong? Nothing. Just now. She mustered up her courage and said, Don't take what your aunt said to heart. He turned around and questioned her instead. How can I not take her words to heart? She meant that I'm a good-for-nothing and a puppet. If I don't obediently follow the family's arrangements, she's implying that I'll be expelled from the Mu family. After a pause he laughed coldly. What does this mean? This means that I'll have nothing. Didn't I say that you won't have nothing? Meng Qingxue said anxiously. Don't you still have me? Do you understand what kind of situation it will be to be expelled from the Mu family? Mu Yanqing moved closer to her and enunciated each word clearly. Qingxue, have you ever thought about how it feels to fall from a high place to the bottom of a valley? Meng Qingxue looked at him in a daze and shook her head. That's because you've never stood at the top. That's why you can say certain things so casually. Mu Yanqing paused for a moment before continuing. Falling from such a high place is more than just smashing one's bones into pieces. Everyone will laugh at you, ridicule you and belittle you. Meng Qingxue was stunned, but she heard him say helplessly, I'm the CEO of Mu Group now. Yes, I don't care about such a status, but once I'm expelled from the Mu family, I'll have nothing. What did this mean? This means that I might not even be able to support myself. No matter how hard I try, I will never be able to catch up to Muyaja. People were different from each other in the first place. Some people were born as noble as the clouds, while others were born as lowly as mud. In the past I was suppressed by him. Now, even if he has left the Mu family, he is still suppressing me. His eyes were filled with immense pain. Meng Qingxue felt as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. She could deeply understand his pain. I can accompany you. No matter what, I'll be by your side. Let me think about it. Mu Yanqing said. Chapter 2988. I'm sorry, Qingxue. Let me be alone. With that he walked away. Meng Qingxue stood there alone for a long time. After a while, a few bodyguards walked over and said to her, Miss Meng, President Mu wants us to send you back. I? The corners of her lips twitched violently, and then she smiled bitterly. Am I being sent to the cold palace? At the Gu residence. Chu Ho had been in a coma for 2 months. He had woken up a few times in the middle, but then he fell asleep again and never woke up again. Xiao Bao didn't know that his mother, whom he missed dearly, was locked up in the Gu residence to recuperate. Uncle Fu coaxed him that he had found his mother, but he was disobedient, so his mother didn't want to see him. When he became obedient, his mother would come and find him. Uncle Fu could be said to be very experienced. These words were tried and true for children. With this trick, Uncle Fu had Xiao Bao under his thumb. Xiao Bao promised repeatedly that he would be obedient and wait for Chu Ho to come and find him. Gu Jinglian had used some unknown method to register him, and put him under the Gu household register. Xiao Bao had a new name because of this Gu Chengzi. Gu Jinglian had despised the name Xiao Bao more than once or twice. In order to come up with a name, Uncle Fu had gone through a lot of trouble. He had thought of hundreds of names that he disliked and sent them to Gu Jinglian for him to choose from. After picking and choosing, he finally chose this name, Gu Chengzi. When Gu Jinglian told Xiao Bao this new name, Chu Xiaobao was very unhappy at first. She felt that Gu Chengzi's name was too lame and unpleasant to the ears. Xiaobao sounded better. More importantly, Xiaobao was already used to this name. His mother had always called him that. Hence, once the name was changed, Xiaobao was more or less not used to it. In the end, the father and son argued and came to an agreement. They would keep Xiaobao as his nickname and Gu Chengzi as his real name. Then, after Xiaobao had a new name, he went to kindergarten like other children of his age. Xiaobao was a little surprised. This was because he used to be envious of children of his age who could go to kindergarten and play with a group of children. But he didn't have a household register and couldn't go to school, so he could only peek outside the school. In such a big playground, the children played a lot of games. Some of them lined up to play eagle and chicken. Some of them surrounded a round black and white ball and kicked it around. Their mother said that it was a soccer ball. He wanted to play, but there was no one to play with him. This time he could go to kindergarten. Little Treasure was extremely excited. However, on the first day of kindergarten, Xiao Bao scared the little guys in the kindergarten. That morning, the teacher brought Xiao Bao to the podium, followed by 2 fully armed bodyguards. They were all in black suits and wore sunglasses. Their expressions were cold, and their eyes were icy cold. They really scared the children in the class. When he came back, Xiao Bao complained to Uncle Fu. Because of this, none of the children in the class were willing to play with him. That was because the 2 bodyguards that followed him around the clock were too terrifying. Xiao Bao felt extremely wronged and could only sit alone in his seat. Uncle Fu didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he heard that. He felt sorry and helpless. Chapter 2989. But there was nothing he could do about it. Over the years, the Gu family had made many enemies in the underworld. Their enemies were from both the underworld and the underworld. Furthermore, Xiao Bao was the only son of the old master. He might even be the future successor of the Gu family. He had to be more or less tolerant. Otherwise, if anything were to happen to little young master, Gu Jinglian would be heartbroken if he were to die just like that after finally having a child of his own. Although Gu Jinglian didn't seem to care about Xiao Bao on the surface, he was just a little arrogant and a little unreasonable. But what about deep down? The baby was very precious. Xiao Bao had been in the Gu family for so many days and could be said to be able to call the wind and summon the rain. He could get whatever he wanted. Uncle Fu was still worried. What if Xiao Bao was spoiled by old master this time? What should they do? However, Xiao Bao was still in awe of Gu Jinglian. This little guy was very mischievous and wasn't afraid of anything except Gu Jinglian. Perhaps it was because Gu Jinglian had never been nice to him, and always had a very cold expression on his face. In Xiao Bao's words, he was like a ghost. When Uncle Fu heard this, he laughed out loud. Then he relayed Xiao Bao's words to Gu Jinglian. The latter's face immediately darkened. You're saying that I'm like a ghost? Gu Jinglian clenched his fists tightly. His face was terrifyingly stern. Uncle Fu's shoulders shook because he was laughing secretly. He said, "This little guy is really smart. He actually dares to talk about old master like that. Don't let him be spoiled," Gu Jinglian said. Uncle Fu agreed on the surface, but in his heart he thought, when it comes to spoiling old master, you're the one who spoils the most. Gu Jinglian asked again, "Is that woman awake yet?" Upon hearing this, Uncle Fu naturally knew who Gu Jinglian was referring to. Hence, he said, "She hasn't woken up yet. The doctor said that his vitality was greatly damaged, and the damage to his body was too severe. He needs a long time to recuperate. She has been in a coma for more than 2 months. Don't tell me he'll never wake up?" Uncle Fu was silent for a long time. Suddenly he said, "The doctor said that she had 4 gunshot wounds, 3 knife wounds, and a perforated lung. 2 of these injuries were critical, and her body was severely damaged." Suddenly he said carefully, "One of them was because of you." Gu Jinglian suddenly recalled that there was once an assassination attempt on him. Chu Ho had taken a bullet for him. Although it did not hurt his vitals, the wound had contracted pneumonia and he had almost died. He remembered that time. "Take me to her." Uncle Fu nodded. Gu Jinglian followed Uncle Fu into the room where Chu Ho was recuperating. Because she had not woken up for a long time, they had already changed rooms twice. However, the maids saw that she was well taken care of. Even though she had not woken up, her clothes were clean, and even her nails were neatly trimmed. Chu Ho lay quietly on the bed. There was no sign of life on her sickly pale face. If it were not for her heartbeat, no one would think that she was alive. After 2 months of recuperation and relying only on the nutrient solution to maintain her vital signs, she had obviously lost a lot of weight. She was so thin that her wrists were so thin that they could be held easily. Her oval-shaped face, which was originally the size of a palm, had become even thinner. With her black hair as a backdrop, her face looked even paler. Gu Jinglian walked to the bedside and stopped. He looked at her silently and frowned slightly. "Why are you so thin?" Chapter 2990. Uncle Fu explained, "Old master, she hasn't eaten for more than 2 months. She has been relying on the nutrient solution to sustain herself." Gu Jinglian's expression changed slightly. "I know. Suddenly he asked seriously, "Will she wake up?" "Of course she will." "Oh," Gu Jinglian replied and smirked. "I thought she was in a vegetative state." Uncle Fu broke out in a cold sweat. He had thought that Gu Jinglian had said that he wanted to see her because he was concerned about her. Who would have thought that this cold and heartless old master was here to see if she was dead? He didn't know whether to laugh or cry at this. As he thought of this, Uncle Fu asked carefully, "If she wakes up, what does old master plan to do with her?" If she wasn't Cheng's biological mother, she wouldn't have survived until now. Gu Jinglian paused. When he thought of Gu Chengze, his expression changed. In fact, if Chu Ho wasn't Xiaobao's mother, if he didn't have scruples about killing this woman, Chu Xiaobao would definitely be heartbroken. Moreover, a child at such a young age would definitely not be able to accept such a fact. If his personality changed drastically, the situation would be difficult to deal with. It was even harder to imagine how much the child would hate him if he knew the truth one day. He used to hate children, but perhaps it was because his blood flowed in this child's veins, coupled with his mischievous nature. He added a lot of joy to his boring life, and brought a lot of laughter to the dull Gu family. Therefore he decided to keep this child. As long as he doesn't cause any trouble for the child's custody, he can stay in the Gu family. Gu Jinglian paused and glanced at him. "Why? Do you pity him? This girl is still so young. I heard that she was the second in command of the Interpol in her early years. Perhaps if we keep him in the Gu family and train him, he will be of some use." Gu Jinglian interrupted him and said, "Back then, she approached me under the orders of the organization to collect evidence on me. At that time I was too careless. Otherwise I wouldn't have let her succeed. She betrayed me. Do you think I will keep a woman who is unfaithful to me by my side? Master, for the sake of the child, let's not pursue the past." Uncle Fu advised earnestly. "As I said, you can keep her. However, if she dares to play any tricks, I don't mind playing along." After that, Gu Jinglian turned around and left the room. Uncle Fu glanced at the person on the bed and immediately followed suit. After the door was closed, the eyelids of the person on the bed suddenly moved. His little finger twitched a few times, and his eyes suddenly opened. Chu Ho opened his eyes. After a long period of darkness, once he came into contact with light, he couldn't help but feel a little irritated. She immediately closed her eyes again, but Gu Jinglian's words still echoed in her ears. "Gu Jinglian." She gritted her teeth as she silently muttered this name, her gaze suddenly becoming extremely sharp. The name Red Lotus was derived from the word lotus. He was a lotus. This was also the reason why Gu Jinglian had kept her by his side in the past. Gu Jinglian, this man. She had seen countless people, but she had never seen such a cold man before. "Uncle Fu, Uncle Fu." A servant hurriedly found Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu saw that she was in a hurry, panting and gesticulating as if she wanted to express something. He frowned and asked, "What's the matter?" "Uncle Fu, she's awake." Chapter 2991. Who is it? Red Lotus. Uncle Fu's eyes lit up and he immediately went to the room. When he opened the door, he saw Chu Ho sitting quietly on the bed. The servant was trying to persuade her, but she treated her as air. She held onto the bedside table with a determined gaze. "What's the matter?" Uncle Fu walked over and looked at her. He then looked at the servant with a puzzled gaze. "Uncle Fu, she just woke up. The doctor told her not to move around, but she insisted on getting out of bed and walking around." Uncle Fu heard this and thought it was something serious. "She's been lying down for so long. She should walk around." The servant stopped talking. Uncle Fu walked over and smiled at her. "Miss, you're finally awake. You have to know that you have been lying in bed for 2 months. Red Lotus glanced at him and opened her mouth. Just as she was about to speak, Uncle Fu seemed to have guessed what she was going to say and immediately said, "Don't worry. I know what you're worried about. Xiao Bao is fine. He went to school and I'm afraid he's not back yet." "School?" She looked even more puzzled. "Xiao Bao has already been registered. He's starting kindergarten like the other children his age." Uncle Fu continued. This little guy was so happy when he heard that he could go to school. After all, children at this age are the most playful. How lonely would it be if he didn't have any friends? When Chu-ho heard this, her originally cold face softened a little. Her gaze was filled with gratitude as she softly said, "Thank you." She could tell that this Uncle Fu took good care of Xiao Bao. More importantly, she didn't know if it was because of his age, but Uncle Fu gave off a very kind feeling. It was hard to imagine that he and that cold and cruel man had a master-servant relationship. As long as it was someone who was really good to Xiao Bao, she would feel grateful. Chu-ho said, "I want to get out of bed and walk around." Because she had been lying down for so long and had not moved for such a long time, the function of her limbs had obviously deteriorated. She knew very well that she needed to undergo rehabilitation immediately. When Uncle Fu heard this, he immediately said, "Don't be in a hurry to get out of bed and walk around. You've just woken up, and your body hasn't adapted yet. Besides, you haven't eaten for more than 2 months. Why don't you eat something first? Otherwise, if you insist on getting out of bed, I'm afraid you'll have low blood sugar." Chu-ho smiled gratefully. "Okay." Only then did Uncle Fu smile with satisfaction. He turned his head and ordered, "Tell the kitchen to prepare some porridge and side dishes." "All right." 10 minutes later, the servant brought in millet porridge and some delicious side dishes. Fearing that her stomach couldn't take it, she didn't eat anything for the time being. Instead, she prepared coarse grain porridge. Chu-ho was touched by Uncle Fu's attentiveness. Whether a person truly cared about someone could be seen from the details. Chu-ho picked up the chopsticks with trembling hands and clenched them tightly. He began to eat slowly. Uncle Fu looked at her and felt pity for her. He didn't know why, but this woman used to be enemies with the Gu family. But he didn't know why. Was it because she was Xiao Bao's mother, and because he loved her he wanted to treat her well? Or was it because his heart ached for her? How could a woman get hurt in order to survive in this world? Especially when he saw her trying hard to hold the chopsticks and slowly swallow, this feeling of heartache became even more obvious. "Is it hot?" Chu-ho shook her head slowly. Uncle Fu smiled and sat by the bed. He chatted with her about Xiao Bao's recent situation. Chapter 2992. As long as it was about Xiao Bao, even if it was an interesting anecdote that happened while eating or sleeping, she didn't want to miss it. After she finished eating and put down her chopsticks, Chu-ho looked at him. She suddenly frowned and said, "Uncle Fu, if I recover, can I take Xiao Bao away from here?" Uncle Fu heard this and was stunned for a long time. He asked her back, "Isn't it good to let Xiao Bao stay in the Gu family?" Chu-ho's knuckles couldn't help but clench. She bit her lip and took a deep breath. "If it's that man, I don't want to." Uncle Fu didn't understand. "Why?" "Because he's a Gu Jinglian. If she let Xiao Bao stay in the Gu family, she was worried that when Xiao Bao grew up, he would also become such a cold man." Uncle Fu heard this and said tactfully, "Chu-ho, you seem to have some misunderstanding about our old master." "Misunderstanding? What misunderstanding? Old master is actually not that scary." Uncle Fu smiled and said, "Old master is actually a very gentle person." Suddenly there was a knock on the door. Uncle Fu frowned and walked to the door. A subordinate dressed in black stood at the door, his face covered in cold sweat. "Uncle Fu, what do we do?" "Something happened." "What happened?" Uncle Fu said impatiently. "Spit it out. Is Dr. Chung here?" Dr. Chung was the Gu family's private doctor. Uncle Fu raised his eyebrows and asked curiously, "Why are you looking for Dr. Chung?" "I accidentally spilled Old Master's tea and Old Master broke his leg. He wants Dr. Chung to hurry over and take a look." Uncle Fu was speechless. This was indeed Old Master's style. But wasn't this a little too fast? He had just finished speaking. "Old Master, oh Old Master, why are you so worrisome? How was he supposed to smooth things over?" He turned his head around awkwardly, only to see Chu-ho looking at him silently. Chu-ho's gaze was even more thoughtful. Uncle Fu immediately reprimanded, "Do you have to look for me for such a small matter? Don't you know how to call Dr. Chung?" "I can't get through to Dr. Cheng's phone." "Then call his assistant." After being scolded like this, the subordinate immediately nodded. Uncle Fu closed the door and turned around. He smiled awkwardly and walked over to Chu-ho's bedside. However, he heard Chu-ho say, "A gentle person? The new subordinate doesn't know how to do things." Haha. Uncle Fu wiped off his cold sweat. Suddenly, he straightened his face and said guiltily, Master just has a bad temper. Just a bad temper. Chu-ho continued coldly. If Xiao Bao were to stay in the Gu family and be influenced by him, wouldn't he grow up to be as violent and cold-blooded as him? This? Uncle Fu was speechless. Xiao Bao is a very kind child. Chu-ho continued. If he were to stay in the Gu family and be influenced by others, he would definitely become an insensitive person when he grows up. Cold sweat trickled down Uncle Fu's back. Miss, so what do you mean? I want to take Xiao Bao away from here. Old master won't agree. Chu-ho retorted. Do I need to follow his opinion? Old master is also Xiao Bao's biological father. Isn't he? Chu-ho was stunned. Chapter 2993. Chu-ho was secretly shocked. He likes Xiao Bao. Unbelievable. She had always thought that this man was a cold-blooded man who didn't know what kinship was, what love was, and what father-son relationships were. Even if it was his own uncle or brother, he wouldn't show any mercy to them. As for Xiao Bao, he was at most curious about him, but he would never develop feelings for him. So what if he had feelings for him? Did he know what responsibility was? Did he know how to be an excellent father? Perhaps in his heart, there was only the so-called chivalry. She didn't want Xiao Bao to become a cruel and numb person like Gu Jinglian. Uncle Fu saw that she was in a daze and said, Old master has also said that you can leave, but you can't take Xiao Bao with you. But if you want to stay you can, but you can't take Xiao Bao with you. Otherwise, old master will not show any mercy. He said that? Chu-ho was a little stunned. Yes, Uncle Fu said. I'll give you some time to think about it. But don't make things difficult for me. With that, he turned around and prepared to leave. Uncle Fu had just walked to the door when Chu-ho suddenly said, Can I see Xiao Bao? Uncle Fu turned around and glanced at her. Of course, but not now. Chu-ho frowned. Why? If Xiao Bao sees you in this state, his heart will ache and he will be sad. Recover well. At least, don't let Xiao Bao worry about you. Chu-ho reacted and nodded. Uncle Fu left the room. Chu-ho held onto the bedside table and was about to get off the bed. When the maid saw this, she immediately went forward to help her. She pushed her hand away and slowly raised her head. Expressionlessly, she said, I can do it myself. But the servant was quite worried about her. You've been lying down for so long, your legs must be very weak. If I don't support you a little, I'm afraid you'll fall, right? It would be bad if you reopen the wound on your back. Chu-he said coldly, I don't have the habit of asking others for help. Only then did the servant step aside. She held onto the bedside table and slowly stood up. However, the muscles in her legs seemed to be unable to exert any strength. It was as if they had gone numb. Chu-ho only felt a cramp in her leg. She hurriedly supported herself against the wall and slowly walked forward. She leaned against the wall and slowly moved to the window. She forcefully opened her eyes wide to welcome the sunlight outside the window. Even if she was stimulated to the point of tears, she would not close her eyes. He didn't know how long it had been since he saw the sun. When he woke up from his deep sleep, he felt as if a lifetime had passed. Outside the window someone shouted, Little young master, school is over. Chu-ho was slightly shocked and quickly looked through the window. Outside the window in the courtyard, more than 20 of his subordinates suddenly stood in 2 straight rows, respectful and reverent. Welcome back, little young master. Xiao Bao carried his school bag and walked into the courtyard. He looked up and curiously looked at the 2 rows of subordinates who were welcoming him home. He seemed to be used to it and walked past them. When Chu-ho saw Xiao Bai, her eyes finally regained focus. She stared at his back view as he walked towards the main hall. The little fellow was still so thin, but he did not look as dejected as she had imagined. Uncle Fu had taken good care of him. He had not suffered any grievances in the Gu family for so long. Chapter 2994. In the following week, Chu-ho worked hard on her rehabilitation. Her body was seriously damaged. Just as the doctor had said, when she was working for the Interpol, she was severely overdrawn and had suffered numerous internal injuries. In order to nourish her body, Uncle Fu followed the doctor's instructions and went to the pharmacy every day to get Chinese medicine for her to drink. Chinese medicine was very bitter. Chu-ho rarely came into contact with Chinese medicine, but she was anxious to recover, so she endured it no matter how bitter it was. The Gu family had their own Chinese medicine pharmacy and their own private doctors. Just the main house alone was equipped with 4 to 5 doctors. Gu Jinglian was a strong believer in Chinese medicine. Chu Ho understood this point very well. He used a brush and rice paper to write the movements. 3 of the doctors were Chinese medicine practitioners and 1 was a Western medicine practitioner. The main house of the Gu family still retained the appearance of the old house from 100 years ago. It had been renovated and designed with a beautiful Chinese courtyard, rockery, and flowing water. Everywhere one looked, it was filled with a classical charm. The Gu family had even specially hired a famous feng shui master to design the feng shui. The land that the Gu family originally occupied was famous for its feng shui treasures. Feng shui treasures were not to be underestimated, but it was very particular and required a lot of knowledge. The Gu family had the azure dragon at the back and the white tiger at the right. 1 dragon and 1 tiger dominated the entire house. There was a mountain of paintings in front and a famous hall in the middle. The tortuous rivers hid the wind and gathered the qi. It was rich and prosperous. The Gu family was spacious and could accommodate 10,000 horses. It could allow the future generations to have a bright future. The natural landscape and the flooring of the house could resist all disasters. The house would be prosperous and healthy. Such a treasured feng shui was coveted by many. In the capital, only the main houses of the Mu family and the Gu family were designed this way. Chu Ho originally thought that when she woke up, Gu Jinglian would definitely make things difficult for her. For 7 days, she did not see Gu Jinglian. Uncle Fu promised her that when she recovered, he would let her see Xiao Bao. Usually, he could only stand by the window and secretly watch her. She had no complaints and understood Uncle Fu's good intentions. After all, she was so weak now. It was inevitable that her child would be heartbroken if he saw her. Although Xiao Bao was young, she was very intelligent and knew how to be considerate. If he saw her sickly appearance, he would be worried. At first, she could only get out of bed and walk around the room, but her willpower was shockingly strong. An ordinary person with such a damaged body would definitely suffer a lot during the rehabilitation period. One had to know that the function of her legs had deteriorated severely. Once she walked, her muscles would twitch and cramp, making it difficult for her to stand firm. But she insisted on walking. When she was really tired, she rested for a while, and then continued walking for another half an hour. By the 3rd day, she was able to walk in the back garden by herself. The doctor said that basking in the sun more could replenish calcium, which was good for the bones. Chu Ho engraved it in her heart. Once the sun rose, she walked around the courtyard. On the 6th day, she was actually able to run. Her astonishing recovery speed made Uncle Fu's eyes pop out of their sockets. Chu Ho silently thought that if she recovered as soon as possible, she would take Xiao Bao and leave the Gu family if she had the chance. However, at the same time, Gu Jinglian received an invitation from the Mu family. At night, he was reading in the study when Uncle Fu knocked on the door and entered. He asked softly, "Master, are you busy?" Chapter 2995. Uncle Fu replied, "It's a wedding invitation from the Mu family. Do you want to take a look?" Gu Jinglian finally looked up, and there was a slight change in his expression. "Wedding invitation?" Uncle Fu explained. "Yes. It's the wedding banquet of Mu Yanqing and Song Zhengguo's daughter Song Enya." Gu Jinglian put down his book and snorted. "They're getting married. Why would they send me an invitation?" Uncle Fu pondered for a moment and suddenly said, "Ever since Mu Yaja left the Mu group, the Mu family has suffered a great blow. Although Mu Yaja has become the head of the family, he hasn't brought any vitality to the Mu group compared to when he was still in power. He's just putting on a show when he's the head of the family. Who doesn't know who's in charge of the Mu group now?" Gu Jinglian raised his eyebrows, appearing unmoved. "Oh," Uncle Fu continued, "Mu Linfeng is still holding up the Mu group now. Xingyu Financial Group is now eyeing you covetously. I think the Mu family sent you an invitation because they want to rope in the Gu family as their backer and establish some connections. I'm afraid this wedding invitation has the meaning of an olive branch." Gu Jinglian said coldly, "You don't have to show it to me." He might not be willing to accompany Mu Linfeng, that old fellow, even if he wanted to get close to him. The Mus and the Gus were not sworn enemies, but they had never been on good terms. There was no need for him to join in the fun. Uncle Fu nodded. Just as he was about to close the door, Xiao Bao's voice suddenly came from outside. Uncle Fu. He appeared out of nowhere and saw the red booklet in Uncle Fu's hand. He asked curiously, Uncle Fu, what's that in your hand? Uncle Fu smiled and immediately said, This is a wedding invitation. Wow, is someone getting married? Chu Xiaobao immediately became excited. Back in Yen City, one of Chu Ho's colleagues had gotten married. She had also brought back such a wedding invitation and a box of wedding candies. She said that when people got married and had a good relationship with each other, they would send such wedding invitations and candies. If he went to the wedding banquet, he even received a red packet. Chu Xiaobao looked around him and asked curiously, Uncle Fu, don't you have wedding candies? Or did I tell you to hide it? Yes. I'll bring it to you later. Look at your greedy face. Uncle Fu, are you going to the wedding banquet? Then is it convenient for you to wear me? How could Uncle Fu not know what he was thinking? He deliberately teased him. Do you want to go to the wedding banquet with me and then receive red packets? Chu Xiaobao was bashful for a moment. He nodded with a red face and emphasized, In the past, when Mom brought me to a wedding banquet, I always got a red packet. Uncle Fu couldn't help but laugh at once. After all, the child was still immature. He didn't know that if the Gu family wanted to go to the wedding banquet, they would have to send a 7-figure sum. The red packet that he would receive would at most be a 4-figure sum. No matter how he looked at it, it was a losing deal. When Gu Jinglian heard Xiao Bao's voice, he looked up and called out, Qingzi, come in. Xiao Bao didn't realize that Gu Jinglian was calling him. It was Uncle Fu who reminded him, Xiao Bao, he's calling you. Xiao Bao poked his little head in and saw Gu Jinglian looking at him and waving at him. Only then did he realize that Qingzi was calling him. He seemed to have not gotten used to this new name yet. He walked to Gu Jinglian's side. His little hand rested on the table as he looked at him eagerly. Gu Jinglian asked him, Do you want to go? Huh? Chapter 2996. Gu Jinglian raised his eyebrows. You want to go so badly? Not really. He fiddled with his fingers and stammered for a while. Suddenly, he showed a timid expression and said in a voice as soft as a mosquito, Yes. He lowered his head and fiddled with his fingers. From Gu Jinglian's angle, he could only see his drooping eyelashes and his chubby cheeks. His adorable expression softened his heart. Gu Jinglian hugged him in his arms and reached out to stroke his little head. He gave a rare smile and said, Okay, let's go together then. Then, Xiao Bao looked a little greedy. Will there be red packets? Gu Jinglian actually had the patience to answer his childish question seriously. Yes, and I think there will be a lot. Really? Xiao Bao asked excitedly, Can you give me all of it? Gu Jinglian said matter-of-factly, Of course. Wow, that's great. Xiao Bao was elated. In his heart, he was silently fantasizing about how many red packets he could receive. If there were a lot, he began to imagine how he would spend the money. If only there were 500 yuan. He was overjoyed at the thought of having 500 yuan. He had never seen so much money before. 500 yuan. Wow, he was rich. Fortunately, Gu Jinglian could not read minds. He only saw his elated expression and thought that he was looking forward to the banquet. He did not know that he was thinking about how to spend the 500 yuan. If Gu Jinglian knew what he was thinking, he would not know whether to laugh or cry. The Gu family had hundreds of millions of assets, mountains of gold, silver and diamonds. This little guy was actually satisfied with just 500 yuan. However, Baby Chu was, after all, someone who had experienced the northwest wind. His concept of wealth was different from Gu Jinglian's, who was used to living a life of luxury since young. The banquet was held on the weekend at a 6-star hotel owned by Mu Group. That morning, Gu Jinglian woke up very early. Butler Fu ordered someone to push 2 rows of mobile clothes racks over. One row had large suits hanging on it, while the other row had smaller suits hanging on it. Gu Jinglian was very picky about what he wore. He first chose a suit for himself. As he was thin, he deliberately chose a double-breasted black suit. He looked imposing in it. He looked in the mirror and adjusted his appearance. Then he turned and walked to the other row of clothes racks to choose a suit for Xiao Bao. As he picked, he asked, Is he up yet? I've already sent someone to wake the young master up. After helping him wash his face and brush his teeth, I'll bring him here to change his clothes. Oh. Gu Jinglian picked up a black suit and looked at it. Suddenly, he raised his eyebrows and turned to look at him. What about that woman? Master, are you asking about Hong He? Of course. She's been doing rehabilitation recently. She's recovering very quickly. Gu Jinglian said. Watch her carefully. Yes, I understand. After a while, the servant carried the little guy over. Xiao Bao was still sleeping. He was in a daze and looked like he was living in a dream. His eyes were not fully open. When they carried him to the bed, Xiao Bao rubbed his eyes with both hands and looked like he was complaining. Oh, I'm so sleepy. Chapter 2997. Xiao Bao nodded, feeling wronged. Uncle Fu was amused by his charmingly naive look. He deliberately threatened. Since you're not awake yet, why don't you sleep at home? We'll go to the wedding banquet and get the red packets. Xiao Bao nodded in confusion and yawned sleepily. However, it was only a momentary daze. After a moment of reaction, he realized what Uncle Fu was talking about. His mind clanged as the golden abacus clicked a few times. His eyes suddenly widened and he said proudly, "No, the red packets are mine." As he said this, he nimbly got up from the bed, put his hands on his hips and said arrogantly, "Uncle promised to take me there." Uncle Fu pretended to cry. "Io, I've always been so nice to you, calling you Uncle Fu. I dote on you so much, but now I just want a red packet from you. Why are you so stingy?" His pitiful look was very convincing. Seeing this, Xiao Bao couldn't help but feel a little ashamed. He clenched his little fists as if weighing something. Finally, as if he had made a decision, he clenched his fists and said solemnly, "How about this?" Gu Jinglian turned to look at him. Uncle Fu was also waiting curiously to see what kind of constructive speech he was going to make. Xiao Bao said painfully, "I'll give you some of the red packets." Gu Jinglian's face darkened, and Uncle Fu almost fell over. After waiting for such a long time and weighing the pros and cons, he was going to make such a speech? "How much is some?" Gu Jinglian asked curiously. "Yeah, if there's 100 yuan in the red packet, I'll give you 10 yuan. If there's 1,000 yuan, I'll give you 50 yuan. Uncle Fu counted with his fingers and muttered doubtfully, "Oh, this ratio doesn't seem right. 100 yuan for 10 yuan. No matter what, it was still 1/10, right? A 1,000 yuan for 50 yuan. That was too stingy. So 50 yuan was the maximum, right?" Fu Bo felt a sense of desolation. Xiao Bao immediately defended himself and said, "If I had 2,000 yuan, I could have given you more." "Stop." Uncle Fu clutched his chest, looking very sad. "I didn't expect you to be so petty." All right. I won't tease you anymore." Uncle Fu rubbed his head and said, "Keep all the red packets you've received. Uncle Fu doesn't want a cent from you." Xiao Bao smiled sweetly when he heard that no one would snatch the red packets from him. After Gu Jinglian picked out the clothes, Uncle Fu immediately helped Xiao Bao change into a small suit. Gu Jinglian walked in front of the little guy and examined him. He felt that there was something missing. Tie. The tie was too mature. Uncle Fu immediately suggested, "Let's use a bow tie." He immediately found a new black bow tie and tied it for Xiao Bao. "Does it look good?" Gu Jinglian took another look. Xiao Bao was pinching the corner of his shirt uneasily and smiling slightly. His eyes were clear, his lips were red, and his teeth were white. He was wearing a white shirt with a small black suit and a pair of black gentleman's pants. He was extremely handsome. A certain picky man finally nodded in satisfaction. This guy had inherited his facial features. His looks were definitely outstanding. If he dressed up well, he would be a handsome little gentleman when he went out. When he grew up, he would definitely be a handsome young man. Gu Jinglian was very satisfied with his genes. Chapter 2998. When they got into the car, Gu Jinglian carried him to the child seat. The little guy was very curious about this thing. He poked it with his finger and asked curiously, This thing is installed in this car too?" This safety seat was installed at Uncle Fu's request by Gu Jinglian. The black Bentley Continental was Gu Jinglian's personal car. However, he heard from Uncle Fu that if Xiao Bao was sitting in the car, It would be best to install a safety seat for the child's safety. Gu Jinglian did not agree at the time. He only snorted coldly, as if he did not agree. However, Uncle Fu carefully discovered that Gu Jinglian had someone install it the next day. He shook his head and sighed. This old master had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Although he seemed to dislike Xiao Bao and was cold on the surface, in reality he still cared about him. Gu Jinglian coldly poked his face and said, "Sit properly." As proud as he was, he would not say that he had specially installed it for Xiao Bao's safety. Xiao Bao sat down obediently and did not say anything. Gu Jinglian fastened the seatbelt for him. Along the way, Xiao Bao was in an especially good mood. He turned his head to look out of the window. His good mood was as clear as the weather outside the window. His two short legs kicked Gu Jinglian in a moment of carelessness. Gu Jinglian immediately hit him on the head and said, "Behave!" Xiao Bao held his forehead in pain and looked at him pitifully. He complained, "Why are you so violent? Xiao Bao will become stupid if you hit Xiao Bao's head like that." Gu Jinglian replied coldly, "You're already so stupid. It doesn't matter if you're even more stupid." He was also a little suspicious. No matter how low his IQ was, it was still above average. How come his son didn't inherit his high IQ genes? According to Uncle Fu, when he was just in kindergarten, the teacher gave him a question. 1 apple plus 2 apples, and the little guy actually said that it was 0. When the teacher asked for the reason, the little guy actually said with conviction, "Because I ate them all. Isn't that equal to 0? Uncle Fu laughed at this joke for 5 days straight. Gu Jinglian was even more violent. He gave him 3 apples and forced him to eat them all. How could he eat 3 apples? After hugging and gnawing on it for a long time, she couldn't chew on it anymore. Gu Jinglian asked him, "How many apples is 1 apple plus 2 apples? Xiao Bao counted with his fingers and looked at the remaining 1.5 apples on the table. He said aggrievedly, "There's still 1.5 left." Gu Jinglian was so angry that his nose was almost crooked. How could he be so stupid? Xiao Bao asked him matter-of-factly, "Since you know that I'm stupid, do you think I'm not stupid enough?" Gu Jinglian glared at him. "Even if I punch your head flat, you won't become any more stupid." Xiao Bao gulped nervously. He heard the hidden threat in his words and didn't dare to speak anymore. This uncle was so violent. He said that he would beat him up just because of a disagreement. The little guy mustered up his courage and said, "The TV is right. Being with a king is like being with a tiger." Gu Jinglian suddenly glared at him. Xiao Bao thought that he was going to hit him again and quickly covered his head. Because of his funny little action, Gu Jinglian broke his guard in a second and smirked. Chapter 2999. "Wow, Uncle, you're smiling. I realize that you look so handsome when you smile." Before he could finish speaking, Gu Jinglian found him too talkative and gave him another knock on the head. Xiao Bao cried out in pain and rubbed his forehead in grievance. He snorted and didn't want to talk to him anymore. Ignoring him, Gu Jinglian's ears fell silent. Along the way, he stared at the documents and dealt with the matters, while Xiao Bao quietly looked out of the window at the passing scenery with eyes full of curiosity. In the car, the radio was turned on and the news was broadcasted. Today, the Mu Group's CEO, Mu Yanqing, and Mayor Song Jinggua's daughter, Song Enya, will be held at the Mu Group's Grand Hotel. More than 100 media outlets will be present at the venue to follow and report on this high-profile wedding. The Mu and Song families were the 4 most prestigious families in the capital. This wedding could be said to be extremely grand. Song Enya woke up early in the morning to wash up and dress up. Naturally, the makeup team was in charge of her makeup, styling, and wedding dress. After a busy morning, Song Enya put on her wedding dress and stood in front of the full-length mirror, silently examining herself. Some time ago, she had lost the fetus due to a miscarriage. As a result, her body was greatly damaged and she was very weak. Even though she had been applying facial masks for half a month, the makeup artist still applied 2 thick layers of foundation for her to make her look more radiant. However, no matter how exquisite the makeup was, it could not hide her dim eyes. Jiang Qiming walked to her side. Seeing that she was in low spirits, she rubbed her shoulders and comforted her. "Enya, today is your big day. Why do you look so gloomy and unhappy?" Song Enya's lips curled up, but she smiled reluctantly. "Why would I be? You look so stiff." Are you still thinking about the child? As soon as Jiang Qiming finished speaking, Song Enya bit her lip hard, feeling somewhat indignant. She gritted her teeth and said, "How much have I sacrificed for this child? I didn't expect that Mu Yanqing to be so heartless as to destroy him." Jiang Qiming comforted her. "Even if the child is gone, there will be another one. Once you're officially married to Mu Yanqing, you'll be the Mu family's young mistress. Besides, it's fine if the child is gone. Don't think too much about it. In the future, as long as you can restrain a man's heart, there will be a second, a third." "Mom." The more she listened, the more upset she felt. "I'm starting to wonder if all this is what I want. Mu Yanqing's heart isn't with me at all. He couldn't even be bothered to brush me off. If it wasn't for his aunt who made the decision, he would definitely use this as an excuse to break off the marriage. You're going to marry him soon. Aren't these worries unnecessary?" Song Enya asked uneasily. "Can we really get married? Why do I feel so uneasy?" Jiang Qiming fumed. "Why do you always say such depressing things?" He was trying to destroy his own prestige. This marriage must happen. Otherwise, all the hard work you've put in all this time will go down the drain. Clenching her fists tightly, she nodded with tears in her eyes. The wedding car was parked outside the Song family's villa. Chapter 3000. Mu Yanqing took the bouquet with a slight frown and a cold expression. He slowly made his way to the door and successfully completed the procedure. When he arrived at Song Enya's boudoir, he knocked on the door. Song Enya was sitting on the bed, her white wedding gown spread out like a sacred lily. She had her head lowered. Her head was covered by a veil that covered her face. She looked up and met his eyes through the thin veil. The two of them seemed to have something on their minds. He had married her because he was under orders. She, on the other hand, had no choice but to marry him. Their union was not based on any feelings at all. Therefore, unlike the sweet and romantic gazes of the bride at other weddings, the two of them looked at each other as if they were strangers. After going through the formalities, Mu Yanqing helped Song Enya into the wedding car. The two of them sat in the back seat, isolated from the hustle and bustle outside. Finally, Song Enya spoke in a low voice. "I thought that you wouldn't be attending today's wedding." Mu Yanqing remained silent. Song Enya glanced at him and sneered. "Mu Yanqing, you don't have to look at me like that. Do you think that I want to marry you? It's all because—" Mu Yanqing suddenly turned to look at her and asked meaningfully, "Do you think that it's a glorious thing for the bride to be abandoned on the road on her wedding day?" Song Enya widened her eyes. "How dare you? You want to throw me out of the car?" "Song Enya, do you know that I hate your despicable face the most when you get your way? I'm afraid of dirtying my hands if I throw you out of the car." Hearing his humiliation, Song Enya flew into a rage out of humiliation. She sneered and said, "Don't touch me after we get married if you dare." "Fine," Mu Yanqing said contemptuously. "When I think of my wife having a test tube baby for another man, I feel as disgusted as swallowing 1,000 flies." Song Enya retorted, "What about you? Do you think you're any better? Mu Yanqing, you come from a noble family, but you're still guarding a high-class prostitute like she's a piece of precious jade." "A prostitute?" Mu Yanqing's gaze was dangerous. "Why am I wrong? Isn't Ming Qingxua the same?" Song Enya said in disgust. "The entertainment industry is a big dye vat. Everyone says that those who come from the entertainment industry are very scheming and are high-class prostitutes. I think Meng Qingxua lives up to her reputation. What kind of tricks did she use to make you run around in circles? What's the difference between you and Mu Yaja? They were all blinded by that B*T. But no matter what, your second brother is capable and capable. Even if he leaves the Mu group, he can still have his own world. What about you? You're just a pitiful puppet." "Shut up." Song Enya, on the other hand, was in a fit of anger. How could she keep her mouth shut? She became even more insolent. "Mu Yanqing, you're a good-for-nothing. You still want to compete with Mu Yaja. Even if you spend your entire life, you won't be able to compare to a single finger of his." Furious, the man reached out and grabbed her by the throat. "Song Enya, don't think that I won't dare to do anything to you." Song Enya did not think much of it. She glared at him and said impudently, "Do it. Do it if you dare. I'm your wife. Strangle me if you dare." Let the world see how vicious and merciless you are. You. Chapter 3001. Mu Yanqing pushed her away abruptly and clenched his trembling fists. Suddenly he chuckled and said, "What about you? Aren't you a self-proclaimed socialite? For the sake of the man you love, you're so cheap that you don't hesitate to use your child to tie him up. You actually thought of using such a despicable method like IVF to conceive his child by hook or by crook. In the end, Mu Yaja doesn't care about your sincerity at all. You say that Yun Shirshir is lowly, but you can't even compare to a strand of her hair. In your eyes, Yun Shirshir is as lowly as mud, but in his eyes she's a precious treasure. What about you? You're as lowly as dust, but you can't exchange it for a glance from him." Mu Yanqing. Song Enya's gaze was piercing. "Stop talking. Why? Did I hurt you?" Song Enya, recognize the truth. You're just a cheap broken shoe that no one wants. Yet you still think you're so superior. In fact, in the eyes of so many people, you're just a complete joke. Mu Yanqing's mouth was very venomous. Compared to Mu Yaja's refined and venomous tongue, his was one that did not choose his words carefully. Song Enya was beaten black and blue. She held back her tears, as if there was a fishbone in her throat that she could not swallow. Her lungs were filled with turbid air that she had nowhere to vent. Mu Yanqing could not be bothered to waste his breath on her. He only treated marrying her as a mission. When the car arrived at the entrance of the hotel, the car door opened and Mu Yanqing got out. He stood at the door and had no intention of helping her out. Song Enya had no choice but to lift her skirt and get out of the car. Just as they got out of the car, countless reporters raised their cameras and took photos of them. However, some discordant voices still fell into her ears. The eldest young master of the Mu family doesn't seem to care much about this delicate wife of his. Look at his cold face. He doesn't seem to want to talk to the bride. This newlywed couple doesn't seem to have a good relationship. The two of them should have no feelings for each other since it's a marriage alliance, right? The bride doesn't smile much and seems to be unwilling. Unwilling? What's there to be reluctant about? Although the Mu family was a fallen aristocratic family, they were still the #1 aristocratic family with 100 years of history. The Song family and the Mu family could be considered to be climbing up the social ladder, right? Song Enya should be grinning from ear to ear after marrying into a rich family. She's probably upset because Mu Yanqing neglected her. TSK. How shameful. I think the Song family is trying to curry favor with the Mu family to get this marriage. Song Enya's face turned even darker as she listened to those gossips, feeling even more vexed. Chairman Mu, there are so many media personnel here. Give the bride some face and help her up. Mu Yanqing retorted coldly. She doesn't have legs. Can't she walk? The bride's wedding dress is so long. It's inconvenient to wear high heels. Only then did Mu Yanqing walk over to her side and reach out his hand expressionlessly. Song Enya reached out and grabbed his arm, her whole body stiffening. The wedding was a purely Western-style wedding. The hotel was renovated in the style of a church. Before the ceremony, the couple had to stand at the entrance to welcome the guests. Mu Linfeng was already at the venue. When he saw Mu Yanqing and Song Enya, his face darkened when he saw their mutual disgust. Chapter 3002. Mu Yanqing furrowed his brows while Song Enya, who was beside him, looked extremely embarrassed. Mu Linfeng said, "Enya, today is your big day. After today, you'll be the young mistress of the Mu family. The guests today are all business partners and celebrities who have frequent dealings with the Mu group. Don't embarrass me." Mu Yanqing nodded. "Understood, second uncle." Song Enya nodded with a faint smile. The two of them stood at the entrance. The man was tall and handsome while the woman was as charming as a flower. For the time being they looked like a match made in heaven. The Mu group had put in a lot of effort into this wedding. Be it the setting or the details, it was as luxurious as a royal wedding. Coupled with the media's tracking, this was the best opportunity for the Mu group to showcase its financial prowess. After Mu Yaja left the Mu group, many people were waiting to see how the Mu group would fare. There were even financial media outlets that were criticizing the Mu group. Now, no one was optimistic about the Mu group after Mu Yaja's departure. Everyone in the Mu family was suppressing their anger, waiting for the day of the wedding to use the extravagant extravagance to vent their frustrations. Romantic music sounded at the venue. Mu Yanqing and Song Enya stood at the entrance to welcome the guests, while Mu Linfeng and Mu Shumen stood beside Mu Yanqing. Song Zhenghua and Jiang Qiming also arrived early to greet the guests. At this time, many guests had already entered the venue. Jiang Qiming smiled especially brightly. Her daughter had finally married into a rich family and had gotten what she wanted. Jiang Qiming had never had much status in the Song family. She could not compare to her elder sister, Jiang Yishan, for no other reason than that Jiang Yishan had married better than her. Although a beautiful woman had a short life, when she was still alive, she was definitely glorious with the title of the Mu family's young mistress. Just based on this, she was suppressed by Jiang Yishan. Things were different now, though. Now that Song Enya had married into the Mu family, her status in the Song family would be extraordinary. Therefore, she was smiling from ear to ear and was extremely pleased with herself. Many rich ladies who usually competed with her entered the venue and held her hand to exchange greetings. Qiming, your daughter is getting prettier by the day. The Mu family is a big family. Now that Enya has married into the Mu family, you'll be able to enjoy life in the future. Jiang Qiming did not like what she heard at all. What did he mean by "I can enjoy life"? Were they here to make fun of her? In the circle of noblewomen, there was always a strong tendency to compete. Jiang Qiming was no exception. Now that she could hold her head high, she naturally couldn't be bothered to bicker with these gossips. Song Enya had no choice but to force a smile on her face. Facing each guest, Mu Yanqing merely curled his lips into a faint smile. However, to outsiders, such behavior was more like the reserved, steady, and elegant behavior of a rich young master from a prestigious family. A subordinate walked up to Mu Linfeng and whispered, "Chairman Mu, the 5 safes used to store the gifts have been moved over." Because the guests at the wedding were either rich or respectable, the gifts were naturally very generous. The gifts were at least 100,000 yuan. For example, Gu Jinglian prepared a 1,000,000 yuan gift for the wedding. An ordinary bag would not be able to hold so many gifts. Therefore, 5 safety deposit boxes were needed. Mu Linfeng nodded and waved his hand. "Okay. Understood. You may leave." Chapter 3003. Gu Jinglian held Xiaobao's hand as they got out of the car. The little guy raised his head and his eyes widened the moment he saw the magnificent reception entrance. "Oh my God! It's so beautiful!" Gu Jinglian held his little hand and tugged at his tie slightly. He was not used to such an occasion. Unless he had a close relationship with the Gu family, he would rarely attend an appointment. He knew very well that the Mu Group had sent him an invitation because the Xingyu Financial Group had been aggressively attacking them and making enemies everywhere. Naturally, the Mu Group was eager to rope in an ally. Gu Jinglian was the most ambitious target of the Mu Group. The Gu family was powerful. If they joined forces to deal with the Xingyu Financial Group, they would definitely have a chance of winning. No matter how powerful Mu Yaja was, he would not be able to withstand the combined forces of the Gus and the Mus. When the time came, Mu Yaja would be besieged on all sides, and Mu Linfeng would be most happy to see that happen. Therefore, Gu Jinglian saw through Mu Linfeng's ambition from the beginning and remained indifferent. However, Xiao Bao looked interested, so Gu Jinglian went to the appointment. Xiao Bao was full of novelty. The wedding scene in front of him was very different from what he had imagined. His impression of weddings was still the wedding of the daughter of the deputy chief of the police station in Yanqing County. However, Mu Yanqing and Song Enya's wedding was decorated like a palatial wedding. It was grand and magnificent. He had only seen such a luxurious scene in movies. Xiao Bao said, "Oh my God! The bride and groom must be super rich." Gu Jinglian snorted disdainfully. In the past, the Mu family had Mu Yaja, so he did not make any comments. However, the current Mu Group was just an empty shell of a wealthy family. He had seen the down-and-out aristocrats in England. Even if they were no longer rich, they still had to pay attention to appearances and ostentation. The current Mu Group had a debt of billions. That old man, Mu Linfeng, was headstrong and self-opinionated. He was no longer in his glory. This wedding was more like a trade fair. Gu Jinglian held Xiao Bao's hand and walked to the door. The reporters immediately noticed him. Gu Jinglian stood in the crowd. He was one 89 meters tall and had an intimidating aura. He was dressed in a suit and wore a pair of sunglasses. His ink-black hair made his eyebrows look even sharper. All of a sudden, the media surged towards him excitedly. This was a rare occasion for Gu Jinglian to appear in public. In the past, he had always deliberately avoided the media and the public. Everyone in the capital knew about the rumors about the Gu family. They all knew that the head of the Gu family was a young, handsome and ruthless man, but no one knew his true colors. Therefore, when Gu Jinglian appeared in front of everyone, the media was in an uproar. The crowd surrounded them like a tide. When Xiaobao saw this scene, he was really shocked. He thought that something had happened and instinctively hugged Gu Jinglian's thigh and the corner of his shirt. Gu Jinglian lowered his head to look at him, only to see him clinging to his side helplessly and hugging his thigh like a frightened little animal. An inexplicable feeling welled up in his heart. This feeling was too unfamiliar and difficult to describe with words. However, he actually liked this reaction of the little one. He bent down slightly and hugged Xiaobao in his arms, hinting at him with his eyes. Chapter 3004. Mr. Gu does not accept any form of interview. Thank you for your cooperation. Don't get too close. Please keep a distance of 3 meters. When Xiaobao saw the group of reporters shouting Gu Jinglian's name and looking menacing, he was so frightened that he asked Gu Jinglian, "Uncle, they seem to want to rush over and beat you up. Let's run." Beat him up? Gu Jinglian's face darkened. What exactly was stuffed in this little guy's head? Was it cotton? He wanted to cut it open to see clearly. This kid actually thought that this group of people rushed over to beat him up. Who was he? Who would dare to beat him up in the capital? Do you have a death wish? He said angrily. Who dares to beat me up? If anyone dared to touch a strand of his hair, he would cut off that person's hand. Why else would they all come for you? You're not a big star. Shut up, Gu Jinglian said. Don't spout nonsense if you don't know anything. Xiaobao mumbled aggrievedly. Uncle, you're too much. I'm so worried about you, and you're telling me to shut up. I'm just afraid that you'll be beaten to death outside because of your arrogance. Gu Jinglian. He resisted the urge to curse and walked to the door with a livid face. When Mu Linfeng saw him, he did not expect him to come. There was a look of surprise on his face, but when he saw his dark and cold expression, his heart skipped a beat and he looked a little embarrassed. He originally thought that Gu Jinglian would not come even if he had sent an invitation. He did not expect him to come with such a face. He even suspected that someone had angered him. Mu Linfeng immediately walked over with his cane and greeted him warmly. Mr. Gu, sorry for not coming out to meet you. Sorry for not coming out to meet you. Gu Jinglian curled his lips coldly and looked straight at him. Obviously, he did not take his hospitality seriously. Xiaobao looked around curiously, but his gaze landed on Song Enya. His heart seemed to be hit by something as his eyes stared blankly. Why did this woman feel so familiar? He seemed to have seen her somewhere before. He could not remember for a moment, but at first glance she gave him a very disgusting feeling. Song Enya sensed a gaze on her. She followed the gaze and met Gu Cheng's eyes. In an instant, her face turned pale with fright. Why is it him? Her memory wasn't bad. She recognized at a glance that this child was the child she had left in the warehouse that day. Seeing the child in a man's arms, she looked at the man curiously. Even though he was wearing sunglasses, she recognized him as the head of the Gu family, Gu Jinglian. It was rumored that he had ascended to the throne at a young age, and had been in power for many years. The Gu clan was under his command, and they were insufferably arrogant. It was said that at that time, Gu Jinglian was the only person who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Wuxia. Then what was the identity of the child in his arms? Could it be Gu Jinglian's son? But she had never heard of Gu Jinglian having a wife, let alone a son. The only thing she was sure of was that this child must have a close relationship with him. Otherwise, why would he lower himself to carry him in his arms? Seeing the child looking at her curiously, Song Enya lowered her head guiltily and subconsciously avoided his gaze. Xiaobao became even more curious and stared at her suspiciously. His mind was in turmoil as he searched for memories of this face. Chapter 3005. Xiao Bao lay on his shoulder and continued to look in Song Inya's direction. Seeing that he was restless, Gu Jinglian slapped his butt. What are you looking at? That bride looks so familiar. I think I've seen her somewhere before. Gu Jinglian ignored him. Seeing Gu Jinglian carry the child away, Song Inya could not help but rejoice. It was said that this child had a bad memory. He had probably forgotten about her and what happened that day. After all, how old could a child remember anything? She was just scaring herself. Song Inya comforted herself. After all, when she found out that she had kidnapped the wrong person, she did not do anything to the child. She did not scold him or hit him. She only left him where he was. Wasn't this little brat fine now? She was still wondering how this child managed to escape from that barren area. She was only worried that this child would not recognize her. However, on second thought, so what if the truth was exposed? After today, she would be the young mistress of the Mu family. In addition, she was the mayor's daughter. No matter how powerful the Gu family was, could they still stir up trouble at the wedding? At the very least, they should give some face to the Mu and Song families and not pursue this matter. Moreover, at that time, she did not know that this child had anything to do with Gu Jinglian. Besides, children were very innocent. They would be over with a little coaxing. Hence, Song Inya did not take this matter to heart. The wedding officially began. 2 flower girls walked into the venue. One of the boys walked in front with a ring pillow in his hand, while the other little girl obediently held Song Inya's skirt. Song Inya held Mu Yanqing's hand and walked to the center of the stage. Then they stood facing each other. Baby Chu looked around curiously. Under the light, Song Inya's side profile came into view. His mind raced as he suddenly recalled something. Scenes flashed through his mind like a merry-go-round, and his face instantly turned gloomy. It's her. It's that woman from that day. In the center of the stage, Mu Yanqing looked at Song Inya's exquisitely made-up face. It was charming and moving, but Meng Qingshua's face suddenly flashed across his mind. Yanqing, you've always been my whole world. What about me? How much weight do I have in your heart? Yanqing, don't marry her, okay? Mu Yanqing, are you willing to have Miss Song Inya as your wife and enter into a marriage contract with her? In sickness and in health, for richer and for poorer, you will take care of her, love her, respect her, and be faithful to her until the end of your days? Mu Yanqing opened his mouth as he struggled internally. The words I do seemed to be stuck in his throat, and he did not reply for a long time. His mind was filled with Meng Qingshua's face, and his thoughts were in a mess. Song Inya could not help feeling nervous when he did not respond for a long time. Yanqing. At the side, Mu Shumin urged him anxiously. He was worried that he would cause trouble. Mu Yanqing came back to his senses abruptly. As if he had made up his mind, he said in a deep voice, "All right. I'm not willing." It's her. It's her. At the same time, the childish and angry voice of a child came from the guest area. She's that bad woman. Everyone raised their eyebrows. Chapter 3006. Gu Jinglian's face darkened slightly. Don't mess around. Xiao Bao did not care that all the guests present were looking at them curiously. Instead, he pointed at Song Inya angrily and said, "Uncle, do you remember what happened that night?" Gu Jinglian's eyes flickered slightly. Of course he remembered. That night, he had a business deal in the suburbs and parted on bad terms. Before he left, he opened the car door and found the child curled up in the back seat. He was covered in dirt from head to toe and was carrying a small stray dog in his arms. However, in his eyes, such a disheveled child looked more like a stray dog. He did not hear the child talk about the cause of the incident himself, but Xiao Bao had told Uncle Fu before. Uncle Fu told him that the child was kidnapped to the capital by 2 strange men because even Xiao Bao himself did not know what was going on. He only knew that he was tied up in a warehouse, and then a woman he had never seen before walked into the warehouse. He did not know what she said to the 2 men, but after that, she left him alone in the warehouse, regardless of whether he was dead or alive. Xiao Bao only said that he heard the woman say that she had kidnapped the wrong person. Although he did not deliberately make things difficult for Uncle Fu, he felt indignant when he heard it. In such a desolate place where there were few people, Xiao Bao was lucky to be able to come out unscathed. Think about it. If not for the coincidence that the chair had been soaked in the rain for many years and had corroded and dried up, what would have happened if he had not been smart enough to break free from the ropes and escape from the warehouse? There was nothing to eat or drink, and there was no rice or water. He was afraid that he would starve to death there. No one passed by that day and no one lived there. He did not have a phone on him and could not communicate with the outside world. There was no way for him to expect anyone to come to his rescue. But so what if he broke free? From there to where there were people, it was a full 10-kilometer drive. Even if it was a car, it would take an hour. However, a car was a car. For a child, a 10-kilometer drive was a straight path to death. Not to mention a 10-kilometer drive, he would not even be able to walk to the end of it. However, Xiaobao was too young. He only remembered the woman's characteristics, but did not know her name or her identity. It was difficult to portray the woman's image with only a few adjectives. He had originally thought that this matter would be left unsettled. However, Xiaobao claimed that Song Enya was that woman. Gu Jinglian was surprised. Are you sure? Uncle, I won't forget her. It was this woman. Get someone to tie me up and bring me to the warehouse. Xiaobao was so agitated that he was trembling all over. He stared straight at the side of Song Enya's face as she turned away guiltily. She's that bad woman. I won't make a mistake. It was impossible for him to be mistaken. If it wasn't for her, I guess I would have been left in such a desolate place. You don't know, if I hadn't met Uncle, I would have starved to death there. At the mention of grievances, Xiaobao's eyes turned red. His nose sniffled as if he was about to cry. Like an angered little beast, he stretched out his tender claws and teeth, itching to pounce on her. Gu Jinglian's eyes darkened slightly as his expression changed. Song Enya was the woman who kidnapped his son? Good, very good. Interesting. Gu Jinglian suddenly stood up, raised his leg, and kicked the table in front of him where the champagne tower was placed. Chapter 3007. The wine glasses stacked on top of each other fell to the ground and smashed into pieces. The floor was instantly in a mess. The sudden loud noise startled everyone present. They stood up one after another, and looked in Gu Jinglian's direction in horror. They looked at the wreckage at his feet in fear and confusion. Song Enya was stunned by Gu Jinglian's shocking action. Mu Linfeng and Mu Shumin also stood up at once. At the side, Song Zhenghua and Jiang Qiming heard the noise and looked in Gu Jinglian's direction. Their gazes fell on the champagne tower that he had kicked over. Only then did they understand where the huge commotion came from. Mu Linfeng hurriedly walked over with his cane and asked politely, Master Gu, what's the matter? What happened? Gu Jinglian did not look at him. Instead, he looked at Song Enya and said coldly, Song Enya, you owe me an explanation. Song Enya was inexplicably flustered. She lowered her head guiltily and did not dare to make a sound. This child actually recognized her. How would she dare to make a sound when Gu Jinglian questioned her like this? Offending the Gu family was scarier than offending anyone else. Everyone knew Gu Jinglian's identity and the status of the Gu family in the capital. The current Gu family was no longer what it used to be. It was even more so that the Muse could not afford to offend them. If Gu Jinglian wanted to make things difficult for her, to put it bluntly, even the Muse would not be able to protect her. Song Enya trembled in fear. Not going to speak? Gu Jinglian's tone became increasingly displeased. I'll give you 3 seconds. I don't have much patience. 1. 2. Mu Yanqing was initially stunned. He did not know what had happened. Why did Gu Jinglian seem to want to cause trouble for no reason? The Muse and the Gus did not have any deep hatred for each other, so why did he want to cause trouble at the wedding? When he heard him mention Song Enya, he tugged at her arm and asked angrily, Have you offended Gu Jinglian? I don't know. Her mind was a jumbled mess and she trembled with fear. Gu Jinglian hated it the most when he asked questions. He did not say a word. His patience was exhausted and he shouted coldly, Speak! Mu Linfeng immediately held his arm and tried to persuade him. Master Gu, don't be angry. Let's talk this out. Scram! Gu Jinglian pushed him away roughly. Mu Linfeng was caught off guard and fell to the ground. Frightened, Mu Shumin hurriedly went forward to help him up, only to see Mu Linfeng's embarrassed and livid face. Mu Yanqing bellowed, Gu Jinglian, this is the Mu family's territory. You have no right to behave atrociously here. Oh, it's not my turn to behave atrociously? Gu Jinglian sneered. Do you think Mu Corporation is still the glorious Mu Corporation of the past? Stop putting on airs in front of me. Even if the person standing here today was Mu Yaja, I might not give him face. Oh my God. Shocking news. At Mu Yanqing's wedding, there was a dispute between the Gus and the Muse. At the side, a few media reporters swiftly recorded the scene with their cameras. Gu Jinglian glanced at the media from the corner of his eyes, and sensed that someone was secretly taking pictures. His gaze was dangerous. The bodyguard standing beside Gu Jinglian also noticed the flashing lights. They immediately walked to the media and shouted, "Who was secretly taking pictures just now?" No one dared to respond. The bodyguard snorted and went forward to take away the cameras in the hands of the reporters one by one. Then they smashed them all on the ground. The media instantly let out a few exclamations. Chapter 3008. Ah, my camera? The bodyguard swept his gaze across the crowd, and the crowd fell silent. No one dared to speak. You're not going to speak, are you? Gu Jinglian saw Song Inya curled up in a corner of the stage. He nodded and said coldly, I'm not going to get married. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd whispered nervously. They did not know what Gu Jinglian was going to do. He said to the bodyguard standing at the side, Clear the venue. The bodyguards immediately moved out and chased the media reporters out of the door. Then more than 10 bodyguards rushed in from outside. They were all Gu Jinglian's personal subordinates. They rushed into the hall and walked up to Gu Jinglian. Master Gu, what are your orders? Gu Jinglian said coldly. Smash it. The bodyguards immediately nodded. Then they immediately spread out in the hall and kicked all the tables and chairs over. The interior of the auditorium was decorated magnificently, with many flower racks and romantic circular arches. However, Gu Jinglian's bodyguards did not show any mercy and smashed everything. The guests were frightened and left their seats to rush to the entrance. The crowd was like a tide as they exited the arena. Many guests were so scared that they did not dare to move. They curled up in a corner and trembled. No one had ever seen such a scene. The Mu family was a big family with a big business, yet someone dared to cause trouble here. However, knowing Gu Jinglian's way of dealing with people, they were not surprised. Thinking that the Mu family would definitely not end well for offending the Gu family, they only thought of how to escape unscathed and protect themselves. When Xiaobao saw this scene, he was so scared that he shrank behind Gu Jinglian, not daring to breathe. When Mu Linfeng saw this, he struggled to stand up with the help of Mu Shumin. He looked at Gu Jinglian and said bitterly, Master Gu, what do you mean by this? Let's talk nicely. Today is Yanqing's wedding. Why are you so angry and want to cause trouble for the Mu family? Gu Jinglian glared at him. Shut up. If you say any more, I'll smash you together with Disheng. Not long after, the originally magnificent wedding hall was reduced to a mess. Song Inya stared blankly at this ghastly scene, her heart in her throat. It was said that the Mu family had spent 300 million yuan on this wedding. Every piece of decoration in the venue was expensive. Just the flower arch alone was worth 200,000 yuan. The crystal goblet from the champagne tower was worth more than 100,000 yuan. Not to mention, the guests present were either rich or respectable. Some of them were even the leaders of the political world. Even the prime minister of other countries was present. Now that the wedding has been ruined like this, the Mu and Song families will only become laughingstocks. Jiang Qiming was scared out of her wits by Gu Jinglian's subordinates. Each of them glared at her covetously. Tall and mighty, they walked over with a swift and fierce aura. With a casual lift of their hands, the stage was overturned. She fell to the ground in fright and was immediately helped up by Song Zhenghua. Shameful, utterly shameful. Song Zhenghua strode in front of Song Inya and questioned angrily, What did you do to offend Gu Jinglian? Say something. I really don't know anything. A few minutes later, everything in the venue was smashed into smithereens. More than 10 bodyguards returned to Gu Jinglian's side and waited for his orders. Bring that woman here. Gu Jinglian ordered again. Yes. Chapter 3009. The 2 bodyguards immediately walked up to Song Inya and grabbed her by the collar of her wedding gown. How would she dare to let them bring her to Gu Jinglian? She struggled with all her might. Jiang Qiming and Song Zhenghua naturally would not sit back and do nothing. They stepped forward to help as well. Unfortunately, not to mention one Song Zhenghua, even 10 Song Zhengguos would not be able to compete with these two strong bodyguards. In the midst of their struggle, a rip was heard. Song Enya's strapless mermaid wedding gown was torn apart by the bodyguards. With a whoosh, the wedding gown slid down her chest, exposing her naked body to everyone's eyes. The crowd was in an uproar. Song Enya was so frightened that she let out a hysterical scream. She covered her chest in shame, but no matter how hard she tried to cover it, the beautiful sight of her invisible bra could not be hidden and was exposed to everyone's eyes. The wedding gown was a one-piece, and when it slid to the ground, even her leggings were exposed. Song Enya's face was burning hot. She felt as if the world had turned upside down and the sky had turned dark. Jiang Qiming was already scared out of her wits, and Song Zhenghua was even more flabbergasted. However, the two bodyguards still did not show any mercy. With the wedding gown torn, they each grabbed one of her arms and dragged her. Song Enya struggled and screamed, refusing to go with them no matter what. One of the bodyguards gave her a hard kick. It was Gu Jinglian's order to bring her over. She had no right to say no. They were just following orders. Song Enya struggled, but one of them grabbed her by the hair and dragged her mercilessly all the way. Ah! Help! No! Song Enya was about to go crazy. She was naked, only wearing leggings and a strapless bra to cover her body. However, she could still imagine how the surrounding guests would look at her with contempt. She had a sense of shame too. Being dragged naked on the ground in front of so many people. She was so ashamed that she wished she could die immediately. Ah! Everyone present could only hear her screaming at the top of her lungs. Song Enya was dragged along the floor by the bodyguard by her hair. Her head knocked against the legs of a table, causing her to feel dizzy. In addition, there were many broken corpses on the ground. Her skin was cut open, and her clothes did not cover her body. Immediately, she was covered in wounds and dripping with blood. By the time Song Enya was brought before Gu Jinglian, she was already in a mess. Gu Jinglian narrowed his eyes. He felt that such a woman was dirty even if he touched her. He asked Gu Changza, "Is it her?" Xiao Bao was dumbfounded and asked timidly, "Uncle, what are you doing?" He hated her, but he was also frightened by this battle. Gu Changza, listen up. You're my son. No one has the right to hurt you. As Gu Jinglian spoke, he glanced at Song Enya coldly. I won't let off anyone who dares to hurt you. Xiao Bao nodded in a daze. Uncle, I'm scared. Somehow he felt that it was very cruel of him to do this. Gu Jinglian furrowed his brows. What are you scared of? The man squatted down and picked him up. Is this enough to scare you? Xiao Bao's good-looking brows furrowed slightly. Somewhat indignant, he puffed up his chest indignantly. I'm not scared. This bad woman deserves it. Gu Jinglian lowered his head and glanced at Song Enya, who was crying uncontrollably at his feet. His brows narrowed coldly. Chapter 30:10. Beat her up. Gu Jinglian cast her a sidelong glance. His nonchalant words sounded as if he were ordering his men to beat a dog. Hearing this, Song Enya could not help but curl up her body and retreat backward. She shook her head frantically and cried, Don't! Song Zhenghua reacted at once. Seeing his daughter being surrounded by the bodyguards, he rushed forward and stood in front of her to protect her. How impudent! Gu Jinglian, this is a public place. Don't act recklessly. You're assaulting a defenseless woman. Are you even a man? Song Zhenggua's voice was thick with the accent of a bureaucrat. Gu Jinglian raised his eyebrows coldly and said expressionlessly, Song Zhenghua, don't put on airs in front of me. Get lost or else I'll beat you up too. How dare you? Song Zhenghua naturally would not step aside. With a dignified look he said, Who dares to act rashly with me here? His words could be said to be awe-inspiring and righteous, but he had misjudged something. It was useless to put on airs in front of Gu Jinglian. Who was Gu Jinglian? Who would threaten such an insufferably arrogant man? Gu Jinglian sneered and could not be bothered to waste his breath on him. He ordered, Beat him up together. As soon as he finished speaking, A few bodyguards immediately surrounded Song Zhenghua, grabbed him by the collar, and raised their hands to give him a hard punch. Song Zhenghua was completely stunned by this punch. The huge impact caused his whole brain to vibrate and buzz. Song Enya shrieked in fright, but in the next second, a slap came down on her face, causing her face to sway to the side. Bang! Bang! 4 to 5 bodyguards surrounded the father and daughter pair, and greeted them with punch after punch. Jiang Qiming let out a heart-wrenching scream at the sight of such a ghastly scene. She had never imagined that things would turn out like this. She scrambled over to Gu Jinglian and knelt in front of him with a plop. Grabbing the hem of his trousers tightly, she begged, "Master Gu, let's talk things over. Stop hitting him. Stop fighting." Gu Jinglian kicked her away and said coldly, "Get lost." One had to know that as a member of the Gu family, he had received martial arts training since he was young. With this kick, Jiang Qiming rolled to the side like a rubber ball until she hit the wall and fell limply to the ground. The pain was so excruciating that her internal organs were about to be turned upside down. "Mom! Save me, save me!" Song Enya's cries were still ringing in his ears. Jiang Qiming refused to give up and crawled back to Gu Jinglian's side. She kept kowtowing and begging, "President Gu, please spare my life. If they continued to fight like this, someone would die." Enya had just suffered a miscarriage a while ago, so her body was still very weak. "This goes on, I'll die. Stop hitting me. Stop fighting. I beg you, don't hit me anymore." Gu Jinglian remained indifferent and turned a blind eye to it, like a cold-blooded emperor. Xiaobao hugged his shoulders and could not bear to watch this scene any longer. He suddenly looked deeply at Gu Jinglian. From his angle, he could only see the man's side profile. He was handsome, cold, and emotionless. However, even though he was young, he understood that this man was backing him up. Backing him up. This word was too unfamiliar. Chapter 30:11. Other than Chu Ho, no one would back him up. Today, however, he had a taste of being protected by someone. This man stood up for him and taught the bad woman who had bullied him a lesson. In his eyes, this man should be very bad. He was arrogant, cold-blooded, and sometimes very fierce to him. He would say things that made his heart skip a beat. However, it turned out that the feeling of having someone backing him up was so heartwarming. Xiaobao's eyes could not help but moisten. He raised his hand and carefully rubbed his reddened eyes as he sniffled. Gu Jinglian could not help but turn his head, only to see him looking at him pitifully with reddened eyes, as if he had suffered a great grievance. The man could not help but feel even angrier. He thought that the young man was feeling wronged and could not vent the hatred in his heart. He turned his head and ordered, "Don't you have any strength in your hands? Give him a good beating." When the bodyguards heard this, they did not dare to delay and increased the strength in their hands. In just a short while, Song Zhenggua's face was swollen like a pig's head. Song Enya was not any better. Her face was bruised and swollen, and she could not even cry. She was almost numb from the beating. Jiang Qiming cried until tears and snot streamed down her face. She kept kowtowing, but her forehead was swollen and bruised. Gu Jinglian did not even look at her and remained indifferent. She turned and crawled to Mu Linfeng's feet, begging again, "Second Master Mu, quickly think of something. If this goes on, Zhenghua and Enya will be beaten to death." Mu Linfeng watched this scene from the beginning. His expression was anxious, but his heart was trembling. He looked at Gu Jinglian. Such a young man actually had such a cold heart. Rumor had it that Gu Jinglian was young and frivolous. He was ruthless and would do anything to achieve his goals. He once thought that this was probably an exaggeration. However, after witnessing it with his own eyes, this man's ruthlessness was far beyond his imagination. Mu Linfeng felt his hair stand on end and became even more wary of Gu Jinglian. However, even though he was old, his brain was still working. He finally realized who Gu Jinglian's anger was directed at. Song Enya must have offended him, so much so that he was willing to offend the muse to punish her harshly. How could he step forward for Song Enya at this point? Otherwise, if they offended Gu Jinglian at this critical juncture, the Mu group would be implicated and the Mu family would not have a good ending. How could Mu Linfeng be so stupid? He was very clear that at this time he naturally had to take a good stand. He absolutely could not interfere at such a critical moment and invite disaster upon himself. Qimeng, it's not like you don't know what kind of person Gu Jinglian is. In order to achieve his goals, he had always been unscrupulous. Why don't you ask your daughter how she offended the Gu family? Apologize properly. Jiang Qimeng was even more confused as she cried. I don't know either. The Song family and the Gu family have nothing to do with each other. Then why would the Gu family pick on you for no reason? Chapter 30:12. If I knew that your daughter had offended Gu Jinglian, Mu Linfeng sucked in a breath of cold air and said with a straight face, no matter what, I won't agree to this marriage. Jiang Qimeng was stunned and fell to the ground in despair. A bodyguard walked up to Gu Jinglian and asked cautiously, Master Gu, she seems to be dying. Do you want to continue? Gu Jinglian asked coldly, she's not breathing anymore? Yes, she is, but she's already fainted. The crowd slowly dispersed. Gu Jinglian looked over and saw Song Zhenghua kneeling on the ground. His face was bruised and swollen, and his body was on the verge of collapsing. It looked as if he would collapse in the next second and never wake up again. Song Enya, on the other hand, had completely fainted. Her face was covered in blood, and her body was covered in bruises. Her chest patch had also fallen to the ground. She was in a terrible state. The bodyguard kicked her face, but there was no reaction. Earlier, amidst the chaos, one of them casually picked up a bottle of champagne and smashed it hard on the back of Song Enya's head. She fainted at once, and no matter how they kicked and punched her, she did not make a move again. Someone went forward to check her breathing. It was weak, but there were still signs of life. However, she did not wake up no matter what. It was not that they were afraid of killing her, but at this time they had to ask for Gu Jinglian's opinion. If he ordered them to continue beating her until she was out of breath, they would continue. Gu Jinglian frowned and walked to Song Enya's side. He kicked her with the tip of his foot, and someone immediately squatted down to wipe off the blood-stained tip of his shoe. Master Gu, she's dirty. Don't dirty your shoes. Xiao Bao also saw Song Enya's miserable state. He was so frightened that he immediately hugged Gu Jinglian's shoulders. Such a little attachment stunned Gu Jinglian slightly, and the corners of his lips involuntarily curled up. He was unexpectedly satisfied with this little brat's dependence on him. Uncle, she's not dead, is she? Xiao Bao asked fearfully. No. Gu Jinglian was very confident. His men always knew what they were doing and would never kill anyone easily. Hence, he was certain that the Missy was still alive. Uncle, stop fighting. Xiao Bao pursed his lips and couldn't bear it. She looks so pitiful. Gu Jinglian said coldly, this kind of person is not worth pitying. However, he didn't finish his sentence. The next sentence was, even if you die, it's not worth pitying. Xiao Bao, on the other hand, felt that it was too cruel. He had already vented his anger by beating her up like this. Initially, he hated and was angry with Song Enya. But after being taught a lesson by Gu Jinglian, he pitied the woman instead. After being beaten to such a state, it was unknown whether he was still alive or not. Uncle, let's go. Xiao Bao tugged at his collar and said pitifully, I don't like this place. All right. Let's go. Gu Jinglian carried Gu Changze and was about to leave when he suddenly thought of something when he passed by Song Zhenghua. He turned around and glanced at Song Zhenghua, who had been beaten until he was delirious. With a look of disgust, he said, the Song family is one of the 4 prestigious families. However, from tomorrow onwards, the Song family will cease to exist. With that, he carried Gu Changze and left without looking back. As soon as Gu Jinglian left with his men, the guests did not care about etiquette and small talk. When they saw the door open, they hurriedly left. Chapter 30:13. Sobbing, Jiang Qimeng pounced on Song Enya and carefully hugged her. However, just as she hugged her shoulder, she heard the sound of bones breaking. She was so frightened that she froze and did not dare to act rashly. Where's the ambulance? Jiang Qimeng broke down and howled. Call the ambulance. Send her to the hospital quickly. Send her to the hospital quickly. Only then did Mu Yanqing react. Just as he was about to take out his phone to call the ambulance, Mu Linfeng stopped him in time. Second uncle, what's wrong? Don't interfere in this matter. Don't you think it's bad enough? Mu Linfeng said hatefully. If I had known that Song Inya had offended Gu Jinglian, I wouldn't have let you two get married. Don't you know that the Mu family can't compete with the Gu family now? That Gu Jinglian is vicious and merciless. If you send Song Inya to the Mu's hospital, given Gu Jinglian's character, he'll probably send people to smash the hospital the next day without a word. Mu Yanqing was shocked and put away his phone. Mu Shumin also had a lingering fear in her heart. Trembling with fear, she asked, "Second brother, look, this marriage? Naturally it can't be." Mu Linfeng snorted. Yanqing and Inya haven't registered their marriage, so it's fine if they don't get married. However, after today's incident, the Mus have lost a lot of face. Those media reporters' cameras have been smashed by the Gus people. Mu Yanqing paused for a moment before saying, "When the time comes, I'll send someone to inform them not to write about today's news article and pretend that this never happened. Do you think that the guests who came to the scene can't see?" Mu Linfeng said angrily, "When the time comes, one person will spread to 10, and 10 will spread to 100. Where will the Mu's face be?" Mu Shumin also looked embarrassed. He glared at Jiang Qiming angrily and scolded, "You're such a troublemaker." When Jiang Qiming heard the scolding, she turned her head and glanced at Mu Shumin with despair and hatred in her eyes. "Second Master Mu Shumin, our Inya has been beaten to such a state, and it's fine if you don't help her." Yet, he was still making sarcastic remarks. "I can see that your ability to hit someone when they are down is not small. You're blaming the Mu family with just a few words." Mu Shumin flew into a rage out of humiliation. "If it weren't for your daughter, would the Mu family be so disgraced? I've lived for so long, but I've never been so embarrassed. At the end of the day, isn't it your daughter who brought this upon herself? Why did he have to offend Gu Jinglian of all people? The Mu family hasn't even taken half a step into the Mu family's door, and they've already caused such a big trouble for us. How can they expect the Mu family and the Song family to advance and retreat together? Who was Gu Jinglian? We don't want to offend them." Now that the topic was out in the open, Jiang Qiming no longer held back and blurted out, "What do you mean by not wanting to offend him? I think you guys just don't dare to offend him." It really proved that statement. Without Mu Yaja, the Mu group is no longer the glorious Mu group of the past. Look at the Mu group now. They have to speak humbly in front of the Gu family. How embarrassing. "You!" Mu Shumin wanted to say something, but Mu Linfeng immediately stopped her and reprimanded, "At this point, what else is there to say? Yet, second brother,